All right, good morning, everybody. I'd like to call our regularly scheduled meeting of the Dorado Irrigation District to order. We're a day late, but thanks for the indulgence of yesterday. So with that, roll call, please, Jen.
Directors Osborne, Dwyer, Veerkamp, Anzini, and Day present. General Manager Abercrombie, General Counsel Colson, Clerk to the Board Sullivan present.
All right, very good. Director Osborne, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please, and a moment of silence?
Absolutely. A moment of silence for the victims in Israel. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Osborne. We are at the adoption of the agenda part of our meeting. I would ask for the indulgence as well as we adopt this agenda that we be a little bit flexible on items 7 and 10. And we might move those around a little bit at a request of some of our ratepayers wanting to be here at 10 o'clock to talk about an item. So with that,
Move to approve.
a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any public input on the agenda? Seeing none, do we have any online, Jen?
If members of the public would like to address the board at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. We're now taking comment for the adoption of today's agenda, moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Anzini. President Veerkamp, it does not appear any members are wishing to speak. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay, please vote on the agenda.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. Communications, General Manager's Employee Recognition Report.
Good morning. This is more of a generic recognition. Believe it or not, October 7th through the 15th is Water Professionals Appreciation Week. Sorry, wastewater guys. Just wanted to take a moment to thank all the EID employees, both water, wastewater, hydroelectric, and recreational services, and recycled employees for their dedication in serving our customers. You know, you don't think about it when you turn on your faucet and use other water for other reasons and dispose of it along the way, but there's about 230 dedicated employees at EID that provide safe, reliable service to our customers. I just want to take a moment under this week and thank them for their service.
All right,
That concludes my report.
thank you. I believe the board also echoes those comments, and we thank them very much. Public comment. This is public comment period for items that are not on the agenda. Do we have any in the audience? Seeing none. How about online, Jen?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Veerkamp, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak.
All right, thank you, Jen. We will move on to communications. General Manager.
None today.
Okay, Clerk of the Board.
None today, thank you.
All right, Board of Directors.
Yes.
Yes, please, Lori.
A couple things that are pertaining to water. I attended the French Meadows conservation that was held and hosted by Georgetown Public Divide and Placer County Water District. It was another visit to our lack of fire resiliency and to show, very much like the Caldor fire, was a smaller burn scar, but a lot of people attended that, including a couple of elected officials. Megan Dow, is she a senator or assembly? I forget.
Marie.
No.
the other one?
She has somebody there too,
Assembly.
but it was Megan Dow. And that gives everybody a perspective. There was also the Sierra Conservancy there, which I really appreciate, because I know they work well with our own staff on issues here. I also attended as a retiree the 100th year centennial, not my retirement, but the, the, the 100-year centennial of East Bay Mud's Pardee Dam celebration. And there were a lot of people there from all over Northern California, from water districts. So I attended in a dual purpose. And it was always great to see some of the people that I worked with. Most of them are dead now, but
Geez,
but it was there was quite a few people, and most of them are from Calaveras County that live up in that area. But it was a gorgeous day, and it made me appreciate again my over a decade and a half employment with East Bay Mud, which gave me the information I need to be acting as a director. So it's always a mixed bag of things when people see me, but that was my background, and very much like those who have worked in the fire districts and elected on that. So I really appreciate it. And Thursday night is a reception at the Sutter Hill Hotel, I think, and it's being hosted by many water associations, but those the Mountain County Water Association. So you're definitely attended. It's in Amador, right? So that's Thursday, and that's all I have to report.
thank you, Director Anzini. Director Dwyer?
Yes, just a quick report, not stealing any of Jim's thunder, but we have an acquaintance that lives in Serrano who had high praise for EID. She found some soggy turf area and called up EID late on a weekend, got a response. The technician came out and helped her dig and find the shutoff valves that turned off the leak from the recycle water, but also found that there was a potential for a leak in the service line. So nothing but praise for the professionalism, and I encouraged her to put that in writing so that we'd have a record and be able to recognize the employee. Thank you.
Very good, thanks, Director Dwyer. Director Osborne?
All I can tell you is Apple Hill is alive and well with the traffic backed up all over the place.
It is that time of the year. One thing for me, LAFCO, we had a meeting last, 2 weeks ago now. We completed the Executive Director Annual Evaluation. And then we began with public hearings on the MSRs for the two cities, City of Placerville, City of South Lake Tahoe, and the Cameron Park CSD. That period will run through December 7th, and there's not much going on in Cameron Park, so we'll be watching that review closely and probably putting them, it sounds like, maybe on an annual review basis with their budget concerns. They should be. Okay. So that's it for me. We're on now to the approval of consent calendar.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a second. Any public input on consent? Seeing none in the audience. Jen, anybody online? Again, this is consent calendar.
If members of the public would like to address the board on the adoption of today's consent calendar, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Veerkamp does not appear. Any members of the public are wishing to speak on the approval of today's consent calendar, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Dwyer.
Okay, go ahead and vote, please. This is consent.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, very good. We've now completed that part. This is where we want to maybe make some changes. We can go to,
Can we do item 5, and then if there's
Yes.
time before 10 a.m., we can move to item 10?
yep. that'll
Thank
be-
you.
That'll be fine, and we may get another one out of the way as well. Good morning, Brian. This is item 5, workshop item.
And good morning. Brian Mueller, I'm the Director of Engineering, and this is a workshop presentation on our annual capital improvement plan process. So this starts the fun time of the year. Every year we go start through our budgeting process. I bring the CIP that's developed in a workshop format for today, and then hope to approve that and have the board adopt that by November of each year. And that's followed up by our operating budget and also supplemented this year with our cost of service study. So we'll be working on that from today's meeting, I think, all the way through December. Next slide. I always like to just review on the capital improvement plan, some of the projects that we've either got completed, either substantially complete or completed, ongoing, and what's up with the next 5 years. So not a ton of projects that were actually completed this past year. There's a list there that you see there. We're actually under construction with a lot, but just some of these have not been completed and are pending. So go to the next slide with some pictures. Starting with the wastewater collections facility relocation. This was completed earlier this year, and this houses our wastewater collections crew relocated from Bass Lake facility. Next slide. The Flume 45 abutment section, we're calling this substantially complete because there is still more work to be done, but it's flowing water. So that was completed earlier this year, enough to flow water at least. More to be done there. Next slide. We try to also address our wastewater collection system pipelines, either doing point repairs or lining projects for repairing some bad pipe. Also, you see here, it also includes manhole rehabilitation. So we've completed that this past year and more to come in the CIP. Longer list of projects under construction. So we'll just go through the next few slides for some pictures. Starting with the Mudwood Force Main replacement. This one is going along really well. The bad section, which we're calling phase 3, from our El Dorado lift station down to a certain point, that was the area that was experiencing a lot of breaks over the last few years. That's been completed and tied in. So that's resolved that concern there, and the contractor's moving along well with other sections. So we've got 100% complete on phase 3A, about 90% complete on phase 3B, and I think it's about 50% complete on phase 3C. So that should be completed early next year. Up in Pollock Pines, we have a 4-bay road and drop-off road water line replacement. This is replacing just constant leaky line break type of pipe, steel pipe up there. The 4-bay road section has been being addressed this year. So all the water line has been installed. They're currently working on readying that to tie in, as well as to relocate all the service lines for our customers up there. So once that's complete, 4-bay road will be a non-leaky water line from here on out. And then next year, the drop-off road section is another water line replacement in the same area that we'll be addressing next year. Next slide. Down in the Cameron Park area, we've had the Bass Lake tanks, recoding and structural replacement work ongoing. So about most of the structural replacement of Bass Lake tank number 2 is complete. They're also working on just the interior coating of those tanks, and then they're going to move into the exterior coating fairly soon, and hoping to complete that either later this year or into next year. Down at our El Dorado Hills wastewater treatment plant, we've got a couple different projects. This one is to rehab 2 of our filters 5 and 6. So the board pre-purchased the material for this earlier this year, and then subsequently awarded a construction contract. Right now, that's going along well. The filters have been, all the bad material's been removed, and then the equipment is ready to be installed. They've been doing sandblasting and recoating work, and that's on schedule to be complete in November. Also, the El Dorado Hills wastewater treatment plant secondary effluent pump station is substantially complete. Still some more work to do there, but that should be complete fairly soon as well. And then we had a emergency replacement of the Echo conduit, as you recall. This one, we had several sections of damaged pipeline from the snow over the winter. And this, again, is going along fairly well. There was actually 3 crane pads set up to replace the pipe, in kind. I understand that we've completed the work for the first 2 crane pads, and they're moving to the 3rd crane pad, which I believe is the slope with the trestle section there. Paul Harlow is here from Siblin Reed. If there's any questions, checking things out, but it's going along really well.
So how far along are we with completion or repair?
I was told by the end of October. We've got some rain, so like end of October to early November, I think is the guesstimate, pending weather, of course. And then this is a long list of other ongoing projects. These are mainly projects that are in design or other type of work, so moving forward with these. We've got, go ahead, next slide. We've been assessing the condition of our EDM2 transmission pipeline. This is the pipeline that serves the majority of our customers from all the way from Camino down to El Dorado Hills. Next slide. Flume replacement. I'll talk about this in some subsequent slides, but the 2 large flume replacements that we're currently working on design activity right now is Flume 45, Section 3. I believe that's about a 900-foot section of wooden flume with the rock wall, as you can see there, that needs to be addressed. Next slide. And then a little bit downstream, Flume 48 replacement. This is about a 450-foot long section that is also in our plans for design work. Okay, and so now I'll move to what's in the draft CIP for the next 5 years. And just as the process went through this year, there's just noted some challenges that were a little bit different than previous years. And the first one is related to our water treatment plants. If you recall, we presented the results of our condition assessments of our major water treatment plants recently that identified a need of about $370 million of rehab and replacement work for those treatment plants to maintain the reliability. So we wanted to add some of those projects in as much as we could into this next 5-year CIP. We need to get work going for El Dorado Hills Water Treatment Plant and Reservoir 1 Water Treatment Plant. So we've included about $93 million for those 2 treatment plants in the 5-year plan. That wasn't included in last year's plan. We just kind of had some placeholder design and research efforts.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Please explain placeholder.
Well, as far as placeholder, we didn't have construction placeholders. We had like $1 million for evaluating some of the
A
ongoing.
reserve.
Yeah, like not a reserve. It was more of we had, and I can't remember the details of each plant, but I think we had about $1 million projecting that we'd be going through design work as we complete the condition assessments. But we didn't include the construction dollars because we didn't know what those were until just recently.
Okay, thank you.
So, sometimes we include call it a placeholder for a construction. Sometimes we've done that, sometimes we don't. If we don't know the cost, we don't include that. And that's an example of that is Silver Lake Dam reconstruction. Last year, we debated whether we should put some dollars for Silver Lake Dam. We didn't have an estimate at the time. Now we do. So now we're putting that construction cost in the 5-year plan. So Silver Lake Dam is nearly complete with 30% design. We just got a late recent cost estimate for that. And so we've included about $50 million for the reconstruction, complete replacement of Silver Lake Dam. Currently, that's estimated for construction in 2027. And then another aspect is storage tank recoating. Storage tank recoating projects, as opposed to complete replacements, the recoating projects has been our practice to put them in our operating budget as an operating expense. We've got some recent advice from our auditors that we should be putting those in our capital improvement plan. And so that was another change just recently where we added about $12 million for both our water and our recycled water recoding projects that are added to our CIP. So just from those three aspects, that's about $155 million of new construction costs that wasn't in last year's CIP. So as you might expect, and I know you've seen the CIP has greatly increased from last year. We also were working with the cost of service analysis, and as part of that, they developed a financial plan, and that really gave us a target goal of what we could afford under the rates that are being considered under that analysis. And so, and you'll see this in the future presentation with Jamie. The financial plan identifies about $230 million of projects to be funded from our water fund and about $40 million from the wastewater fund. And so that was our challenge is, you know, we included new money of about $150 million, had to keep within the financial constraints of the cost of service analysis. And while the CIP increased, we really had to make some hard efforts to cut other projects. There's many other projects, and so we've got, you know, 3 particular projects increased a lot. We had to reduce a lot of the other quote-unquote smaller projects to try to fit within our financial plan. Next slide. This is the summary of the CIP, and you can see all the large expenditures over the 5 years are in water, $185 million. That includes projects like the Slide Park Intertie and the water treatment plant improvements. And then in hydroelectric, of course, out in 2027 and potentially 2028, Silver Lake Dam is in those out years. Next slide. And then talking about some of the deferrals and reductions. Initially, when staff all got together and started reviewing all the different projects, our CIP was about almost $390 million. And this is typical. We usually, you know, we identify a need far greater than we could either afford financially or even do, you know, with our staff. So we went through the process of making deferrals and cutting some of the projects. We cut about $90 million from that $388 million. But then we got a revised Silver Lake Dam estimate. So we had a kind of a bit of a yo-yo effect. We had the Silver Lake Dam estimate we received increased the CIP back up. And we also, as I mentioned, we added the tank recoding projects to the CIP. So that resulted in about the $320 million planned estimate. Some of the deferrals, these are some of the examples. This is not an exhaustive list, but some of the projects that have been reduced in cost over past plans include the service line replacement. The goal, as Dan and Patrick will tell you, we're trying to get to about 800 service lines annually, just with the number of other projects that they typically end up getting pulled off on, either legs or brakes or any other type of work. We've tried to make that, I think it was about $5 million per year. I think, yeah, $5 million per year of service line replacement. In past plans, we've reduced that to about $3 million per year. The water construction storage facility, this is a facility that's long been our list to construct a storage facility up in our upper yard. We've got a lot of materials for our construction crews, pipe and all kinds of equipment that's just sitting in the sun. And so the construction storage facility has been in our CIP. We were proposing that be deferred and try to find just alternative ways that we can prevent the degradation of our pipe and materials up there. The Slide Park outlet control improvements. This one, you know, I think is just another thing where, okay, we'll just try to get by for a while, continue to control manually by additional monitoring, and just, you know, just improvements, just try to get by. And then I mentioned the flume replacement. So in our 5-year CIP, we've always had flume replacement. We still have some flume replacement, some of our smaller flumes. We've got 2 flume replacements in our 5-year CIP. One is starting next fall in 2024. But we're proposing to defer both Flume 45, Section 3, and Flume 48 for construction at this time. And the rationale for that is that if we were to build the Slide Park Intertie, which is scheduled for construction next year, we're going to have more reliability to withstand if we do have an unplanned outage of a flume. We have the ability to pump water from Res A up to Res 1 directly to our treatment plant, and then be able to much better withstand, an unplanned outage. During the summertime, if we had an outage, that's another story, but I think with the slide park here, it'll give us much greater reliability. So just in terms of trying to defer costs, those are two big projects that we've deferred as far as the construction. Moving on to water line replacement, I believe we had about $5 million per year in water line replacement. We reduced that down to about $3 million per year in the out years, as well as pressure reducing station upgrades. A lot of different pressure reducing stations that need work, and this is just another category of let's try to get by while we focus our dollars in other areas. Next slide. Okay, and I'll just quickly go through some of I've talked about a lot of these already, but just some slides with some pictures. The Silver Lake Dam replacement, again, that's slated for 2027, about $50 million. Next slide. Slide Park Intertie, the estimate is about $30 million. We have a $10 million grant for construction of this from Department of Water Resources. The water treatment plant improvements, again, about $93 million over the 5 years for El Dorado Hills and Reservoir 1 treatment plant. And we're going to be looking at, the ways to phase in that work at El Dorado Hills and at Reservoir 1. Next slide. On our water storage recoating and replacement program, about $30 million in total for these. The top picture is our Reservoir 1 floating cover reservoir. This one, we've got construction dollars shown in our CIP. We are trying to get a grant approved for this from FEMA's grant program to replace this floating cover with new tanks. And then the two bottom pictures, this is tank 4, reservoir 4. This is just a little bit up the hill from us. This was built, I think, in 2000. You can see the left picture. It's kind of a tough one to see, but it's a nice dark green, shiny tank, and you can see now it's some shade of light blue and gray, which is the oxidation that's occurred over time. So that's a tank recoating and possibly structural replacement on the interior as well. Next slide. Again, I mentioned the service line replacement, about $3 million a year, $50 million over the 5 years. That'll be ongoing. Water line replacement of about $9 million per year. Again, drop-off road is slated for next year, and then another $2 to $3 million annually beyond that. On the wastewater side, lift station upgrades, we've got primarily 3 lift station upgrades planned over the next 5 years. Indian Creek Lift Station, St. Andrews Lift Station, and Rancho Ponderosa, as well as some communication upgrades. That totals about $9 million. Wastewater pipeline replacement, about $20 million. Completing the mother-lode force main. Moving on to Strolling Hills sewer line, which is part of the mother-lode force main pipeline system. It's just a gravity section that is at the downstream side, so we need to also address that section as well. And then additional collection system pipeline rehab, as well as some other force main replacement. This one we've got identified in Ponderosa Road. And then for the general district category of projects, this is more of a combined district thing, not specific to any water or wastewater. We've got completion of the Hansen 7 software replacement, about $2.4 million in 2024. Vehicle replacement, ongoing vehicle replacement of about $6.5 million. And then on the IT side, various infrastructure and systems replacement of about $2 million, as well as SCADA safety and security improvements of about $3 million. So I think it's about $14 million in total for the general district section of projects. This slide compares the CIP over the past years, and you can see in 2022, the board adopted about a $238 million CIP. With last year in 2023, we reduced that due to some of the financial concerns that we've been talking about, to about 208 million. And then you can see there's a large increase this year up to 321 million. Typically, our actual expenditures are about 70 to 90% of what's planned. So with a $320 million CIP, if all goes to plan, then we would spend about 275 million over that 5-year period. And again, that level of expenditure matches our cost of service financial plan. This is a graphic of just showing our historical expenditures that are adjusted based on our based on construction cost index compared with our anticipated future expenditures. As you can see, the next 3 years, it's the spending is pretty much in line with what we've been doing over the last few years, about 40 million per year. And you can see in 2027 and 28, that number increases significantly with Silver Lake Dam and some large upgrades at the water treatment plants. And then moving on to financing. So again, the large projects are projected to be funded by a 2024 bond issuance of about $60 million. That would fund the Slide Park intertie, as well as the beginnings of the El Dorado Hills and Reservoir 1 water treatment plant improvements. Potentially, we could also throw in a water storage improvement as well, either at Reservoir 1, although I mentioned we're hopeful for a grant for that project. We've also got Reservoir 6, which is another steel tank a little bit south of Placerville in our CIP. And then moving forward in 2027, another bond issuance of about $120 million, again, for further improvements at our treatment plants and to fund Silver Lake Dam replacement. And then as far as overall financing of the CIP, again, 275 million of actual expenditures would be funded by basically 3 components: the bond proceeds that I just mentioned. We'd like our rates to generate revenue for pay-as-you-go projects, some of the smaller projects, and we also use FCC, facility capacity charge revenue, to help fund our capital improvement plan. And then I mentioned grants. We took a look at just kind of our past success and future hopeful success with grants to help offset some of these costs. And then just looking from between 2014 and 2019, we received about 7 grants, totaling about $12 million. The largest one was our Folsom Lake intake in TCD, but we also received grants for water line replacement in Pollock Pines, the improvements at Outingdale for the intake, raw water intake, and fuel reduction at some of our properties. And then since 2020, another 5 grants awarded for about $15 million. I mentioned the $10 million for the Slide Park intertie, almost $4 million for backup generators, some funding for Outingdale Dam improvements, as well as continued fuel reduction. And then we've got about $41 million, if we add it up, in the hopper for potential grant applications. Just last week, we applied for $5 million, a $5 million grant for Silver Lake Dam. This is a dam safety grant opportunity from the Department of Energy. We've also got FEMA grant applications in for flume replacement, both Flume 45 and Flume 48. Floating cover reservoir replacement, we've got grant applications from FEMA as well for those, as well as a recreation grant potential, and we also continue to try to get some grants for fuel reduction. Okay, so last slide is just as far as next steps. Again, this is a workshop, so we'll take any board public input and make any necessary revisions before we come back to the board for adoption. Again, the CIP has been incorporated in the cost of service analysis as far as expenditures and the timing of those expenditures. And at this point, we would be planning to come back at the next meeting, October 23rd, to ask for adoption of the CIP, as well as approval of the cost of service analysis. So thank you for listening. Any questions?
Yeah, Director Dwyer.
A question and comment, and then maybe a question or two. One is, the cost of capital improvement plan is a key component of the cost of service study, as you pointed out, along with the operating budget. And I would like to applaud you and your staff and the whole staff for doing a hard scrub on these capital projects, trying to keep those costs to a minimum and avoid that huge roller coaster cycle that we seem to be stuck on. I think one of the comments you made was on some of the deferred projects is we're just trying to get by. And a lot of this stuff we've been trying to get by for a long time. So again, thank you for scrubbing that. I went through each one line by line. I cannot find any other deferrals that I would suggest. So I would challenge my fellow board members, since this is a workshop, to speak now if you think there's any these projects that need to be revisited before we, at our next meeting, approve this and move on with the cost of service. Thank you.
Director Osborne?
Just a question, the Silver Lake Dam grant funding, where would be applicable to get a grant to offset some of the cost for that? I'm curious.
Yeah, so we just applied for a $5 million grant last week. It's from the Department of Energy. They've got some funding available for dam safety improvements specifically.
Oh, okay.
So that one's
Well,
could be a potential, and we'll
I could
continue
only
looking at it.
add to Director Dwyer's comments. We have a district that runs 220 square miles. In addition to that, we have 4 dams that lie outside of that we have to maintain. And it is not a cheap operation. It is tough for the staff to delineate those things that we can defer and those things that we absolutely have to do. And I'm going back a few years. When we first started, you could remember 15 years ago, and we really started to address some of these defaults, and it has been an expensive proposition for too many years. Nobody raised rates, nobody did anything, and when I first got here, almost 24 years ago, 23 years ago, I could look at some of the capital improvement plans that were almost nothing. So anyway, congratulations for a job well done.
Dr. Day?
Well, Brian, I'm going to give you a little different feedback because I remember not very long ago that our total 5-year CIPs were around that 80 million that we're seeing for 1 year, especially for those years 4 and 5. What I would encourage us to do, or for you guys to do, is to go back and look. And I know you're working hard on this and doing what you can, but more of what we've talked about before of trying to even out the CIP expenditures. And speaking of the roller coaster, we're heading for back up into huge numbers. I'm reading the annual CIP expenditures are much higher than before. And we have, to George's point, we've been not kicking the can down the road the last 15 years. We've been spending a lot of money. But what I'm going to say is it's too much too fast. And I'm not saying we don't do any of this stuff. All of it is worthwhile and needs to be done eventually. But to use an analogy that a lot of people would get is you're in your house and you got a 40-year-old roof. And yeah, sometimes it would be nice, and the most efficient thing to do would be to put in a whole new roof, because then you're good, you think, or hope for another 40 years. But when we go to the cost of service study and we look at the rates, and these rates are shooting up so high that we're headed towards an unsustainable model. And so instead of this stuff over 5 years, if we spread it out over 6 or 7, it still gets done, but it helps even out the expenditures, which then takes pressure off the rates. And then the rates are maybe only 8% going up a year, which is still a lot, but compared to what we may be looking at. So that would be my suggestions. And yes, I think that, yeah, the El Dorado Hills Water Treatment Plant is close to my house. And there's elements of it that are getting pretty old, but again, using the roof analogy, we spend a little bit to keep it going, keep it patched together to try to get into a more even template of our expenditures. So we don't have this roller coaster ride heading up, which is what we're heading towards right now. So that's my feedback.
Director Anzini?
I appreciate the PowerPoint. I think it's important that our ratepayers get an opportunity to look at the scenario that you've set up. And as staff, you are recommending us to keep the house together. I really, really understand how important it is. You know, anybody's a homeowner, you know, if you've got a deck that's got to be replaced because of the water and in the deterioration of those boards, and that's what I see the water district like. It is because our flumes just started shaking down and is kind of like a vibration happening throughout our whole system. If you have to nut and bolt up there, there's something going on down there. And a lot of people need to understand that it's just like the Golden Gate Bridge. You got to paint it every 2 to 3 years in order to keep it from rusting over. And I haven't been here long enough to understand that this happened 10, 15 years ago and has gotten bigger. But the cost of living and inflation has caused a lot of this problem. And I don't believe that you have kicked it down the road. It's just a big district to have to take care of, including the Project 184 section, which is Silver Dam and Caples and on. That water is important for us. We have water permits and we have the whole, you know, the water rights but we've also been given the responsibility to take care of those. I think it's really important that the ratepayers understand that all of that helps our area. I agree with Director Day, looking at what is coming forward on rates is kind of scary for almost everyone who is impacted or on a lower income or a retired income. Even people who are well off are looking at how much am I going to pay more for water. So we have to kind of like balance that, and I know it's difficult for staff to do that. I know it's difficult for the leadership to do that, but we also have to look at the ratepayers. And I'm kind of concerned that all of this jammed into a 5-year. It could be extended to maybe a 7-year, but you have to kind of take some breaks there. So that's my approach on this. And 17% increase in my rates is scary. During the summertime, it was useful or whatever, but most people are having problems with that. So I appreciate the presentation. I hope the ratepayers pay attention, how important this is, and as we move on with the cost of services, we will see what happens.
Thank you, Director Anzini. I'll just add that I didn't wanting to get too far down the road in the cost of service analysis, but this is all very important, or it's critical infrastructure, you know, starting with dams and working their way all the way down to the end result of the water delivery. We've seen what it's cost us just this year in emergency replacement of components. I'd like to think we'll get ahead of that eventually, but with the old infrastructure, it's a very tough one to do. And Brian, I really appreciate all you guys' hard work, and I know this is, in my opinion, and it sounds like the other board members as well, this is a top-level list of how to keep things, you know, best shape possible. Well, again, going back to the cost of service, we're just going to have to be careful on this. There are just so many costs competing out there at so many levels. So I certainly want to keep our infrastructure up. I believe in pre-planning and planning ahead is a way to do that, but we'll have to see how we get through the cost of service and that analysis, and I really appreciate it being tied in there. I'm assuming that the bond payments are what's tied into that cost of service component, not the total cost of these projects.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
That's why we increased the bond payments. And I do see, believe it or not, light at the end of the tunnel, because a lot of debt payments go away in 2036. And what we've tried to do is, how can we manage our assets and replace the assets, the critical assets, between now and then, when we can afford a lot more capital improvements without affecting rates. And our job as water professionals or wastewater professionals is make sure the water's running and make sure wastewater's flowing the right way. And it's a challenge. And we're all ratepayers here too, so we feel the pain that way. But number one goal is make sure it's safe, reliable service to our customers.
Right, and it's important, as well as Director Anzini pointed out, that hopefully our ratepayers are paying attention, because it's not only about rates. We got to keep the water flowing and the wastewater as well being done, and it doesn't help when more regulations get put in place, and, we have spills that we have to settle lawsuits when Mother Nature doesn't help, but yes, they do help. Anyway, it's all complicated. So with that, any other comments, and then we'll open it up to the public.
Just a comment, Director Anzini mentioned, the cost of materials has gone absolutely crazy. I used to buy a 3/4 inch PVC thing for 35 cents. It's $1.19 for a piece of PVC pipe. For just and I've talked to some of the contractors around, and they're just saying they cannot believe what it's costing for materials. In fact, one developer I read said that between the material cost, his labor costs, and adding a little bit for the business, he can't even sell the houses for what they're costing. I mean, it has gone absolutely crazy. Just a point.
All right, any other comments? At this point, let's open up for public comment on the workshop item, the CAP review. Anybody in audience? No? Okay, anybody online?
If members of the public would like to address the board on workshop item number 5, now is the time. Please refer to the page 2 of today's agenda for detailed instructions. President Veerkamp, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak.
Okay, again, this is a workshop item. Any other final comments from the board?
Just
Yes,
a
Jim.
comment, Lori, our Director Anzini mentioned that I hope the public pays attention when we have our workshops on the customer service side of the business. We'll be presenting the similar type of information, trying to explain the dilemma we're in and why the rate increases are needed.
You want to state the dates?
Yes, we were going to do that under the other one, but I can do it now. It is in my stack of stuff. Do you have them, Jim? I
It
have
will
them.
be November 13th at 5:30 PM at the Cameron Park CSD, and Thursday, November 16th at 5:30 here at district headquarters.
Thank you.
All right. Given that, we will move on then to our next item. I believe we can go to item 10.
Yes, please.
Well, good morning. My name is Mike Brink. I'm the Supervisor of Development Services at EID here. Here to have considered adoption of the water supply assessment for the Town and Country El Dorado project. Next slide. And in the audience today, I have Josh Panier, who represents the applicant, the developer, and Greg Young Sanjero, who's the prepared the WSA. Previous board actions, in 2021, the board adopted the water supply assessment for the Creekside Village specific plan. In June of '21, the board adopted the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. In October of last year, the board received and filed the 2022 Water Supply and Demand Report. Next slide. Some of the issues. The county's requested that the district prepare a WSA for the proposed Town and Country Village El Dorado project. And per the water code, A WSA is required for proposed developments of more than 500 residential units. Next slide. Consultant selection, the district requested proposals from the surface water hydrology consultants on our on-call list. The district staff and the applicants selected Sanjero, which is formerly known as Tulling Young, to prepare this WSA. And Sanjero did prepare our previous WSAs and also prepared our 2015 and our current 2020 urban water management plans. Next slide. Funding, all costs today will be paid for by the applicant, including Sanjero's consultant staff time and all district staff time. Time is being billed against the time and material deposit that's been received by the applicant. So no funding is requested as part of this action today. Next slide. Moving on to the project, the proposed projects will be built on approximately 60 acres, located just north of Highway 50 at Bass Lake Road. And it's got two different areas. One is the proposed project development area, which is more further defined and proposed to have 2 hotels, restaurants, event center, and museum, plus some residential cottages. And the other part of the project is not fully defined at this point, and could possibly include hotels, medical facilities, condos, and multifamily buildings as allowed by the county. Next slide. This is the location map. The light yellow area is the Bass Lake Hills Pacific Plan with the black line going up from Highway 50, Bass Lake Road, and the orange is the proposed Town and Country Village El Dorado site. Next slide. Here's a blow up of that area. Again, Highway 50 at the bottom, Bass Lake Road on your left, the new Country Club Drive up the upper road. The darker orange yellow is the proposed program areas, not fully defined at this time. The yellow areas are the project that is defined with the hotels at the lower hotels and restaurant along Highway 50, and above Country Club is the proposed cottages. Next slide. The water code requires the water supplier to make a determination of sufficient water supply to serve certain projects. And this proposed project triggers that requirement based on its size. The district is the proposed supplier and required to prepare this WSA and have it adopted. And if approved, this approved WSA will become part of the county's CEQA analysis and EIR documentation. Next slide. Per the water code, if the projected water demand associated with the proposed project was accounted for in the most recently adopted urban water management plan, the public water system may incorporate the requested information from the urban water management plan in preparing the elements of the assessment. And using that approach, the first step was developing water demands based on the project details, comparing the project with anticipated growth within the urban water management plan, and finally determining if the district has enough water to meet all demands and all conditions. Next slide. Moving on to the demands, this is the project development area, which is more further defined. Again, proposed has a hotel, some retail space, restaurants, cottages, and landscaping, all built to current code and water efficiency standards. The total estimated demand per year is 72 acre feet per year for that project component. Next slide. And then we also have the program area, which, as I mentioned, is not fully defined, but conservatively, we assumed residential housing, mixed use here with a total annual demand of 135 acre feet per year for the program area. Next slide. So now to compare this project with the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan growth and demand forecast, as summarized in the 2 previous slides, the total project demand has a total demand of 207 acre feet per year. The 2020 Urban Water Management Plan forecast a 1% growth rate in the El Dorado Hills area over the next 25 years. And that growth would account for just over 7,000 residential units and 375 non-residential units like commercial places and hotels. Totaling a total demand within El Dorado Hills, increase in demand over 25 years of just over 3,000 acre feet per year in the next 25 years in that region. The proposed project is consistent with that 1% growth assumed in that region. And assuming that the growth of 207 acre feet with 3,000 acre feet assumed total growth of over 25 years, it represents just over 6.4% of the total demand forecast in that region over the next 25 years. And now comparing to system reliability analysis and conclusions in the Urban Water Management Plan. Chapter 7 of the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan did a reliability analysis and determined we have sufficient water to meet all needs under all conditions in normal years, single dry years, and multi-dry years. Those are summarized in Table 5 of that plan. And that analysis in the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan forecast to 2045. The water supply assessment forecast up to 20 years out. So the Urban Water Management has enough time in it for 25 years to be used for this 20-year assessment. Next slide. Moving on to conclusions, as detailed in the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan, the district has sufficient supplies through 2045 for all existing and planned uses. The proposed project is part of the 1% growth anticipated in the El Dorado's region in the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. Therefore, pursuant to the Water Code, the district will have sufficient water supply to meet the town and country village El Dorado's estimated build-out water demand of 270 acre-feet per year.
Question you're saying, let me put this on there. The question on this slide where you say the project is part of a minus
Oh,
1%?
Approximate, it's approximate.
That's approximate.
Okay.
So we used the 1% growth rate was from the county, it was like a 1.05%.
I
so-
just wanted some clarification on that. Yeah, tilde or whatever. Thanks.
Next slide. Board options today. Option 1, adopt the water supply assessment for the proposed town and country El Dorado project. Option 2, take other actions. Recommendations, option 1.
All right. Board member questions, comments?
Just a comment.
We have to have a first and second before we have comments,
get-
questions only before the
I'll
motion.
move it.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second, with a comment,
Okay,
if allowed.
you made the second.
I would just want to make sure that we make it clear that we, EID, are not approving the project. We're saying that the study shows we have sufficient water resources to support that project in terms of water. So I think it's, there's probably going to be some public comment at now or some future date about this project, and there's already been some chatter on the social media. So we just need to make clear that the county is the one that approves or disapproves these projects. All we're saying is, for this component, yes, we do have enough water to support this, even in the 4th or 5th dry year. And again, the difficult sell is always, why are you allowing this to be built when you're asking me to cut my water use by 10%, 5%? And it's always a difficult thing to explain the mandates from the state versus the realities of our district. So I just need to, Jesse, I guess that's going to be a big challenge for you to do that outreach. And the other comment I'd make is, this says we have adequate water supplies. And I understand the developer is required to do all of the infrastructure within the project area, but are we going to require more storage? And we just saw the Bass Lake tanks are probably what's going to serve this project because it's next door almost. So is there any thought to requiring the developer to invest in additional capacity for to deliver that water that this study says is available? How do we get it to the actual customer?
This proposed project's right below Bass Lake tanks. The project will be required to build at their cost all infrastructure to get water to their project, including down Bass Lake Road and all the stuff within there, actually down Country Club Drive, the old Country Club, or the new Country Club Drive, which helps our resiliency out there. Also pay FCCs, it's a substantial project. Those FCCs will go towards capital improvements to fund the expansion project you're talking about.
Just wanted to make that clear.
Yep. Director Anzini?
Yeah, there's a couple caveats, and I appreciate Director Dwyer bringing that up. The phenomenon of dealing with a ratepayer face-to-face, is kind of difficult, but, but that's how we got elected, and we're representing them. But this area is highly sensitive in political realm right now. And I don't have a problem. EID is responsible for providing water and wastewater. That is our direction. That is what we're supposed to do. And when a project like this that comes forward is going to be a bit topsy-turvy for a lot of us, especially the person who represents that area, I have no problem with that. I think that I have seen the half of that plan, and I love the plan because I personally think it's an improvement for that area and for it to be developed in a more green element, which is, I understand that Mr. Mahana is here. And the process of having that done and having the infrastructure ready for when they're ready is important. That's our responsibility. But we kind of let the ratepayers know that there's two options here. I mean, one is an option of there's two parts here. One is for the area, the town and country area, but the other part is for a large development for the old golf course. Am I correct? That's all part of it?
The old golf course is in Serrano, so that would not be.
Old golf courses.
They're kind of like, we're providing enhancement, or else, are we coming down that line?
Central El Dorado project, which is the old El Dorado Hills Golf Course, is completely separate from this.
They are separate. So we need to, see, that's why we need to inform ourselves so we can answer those questions, to make sure that it's just not a general landscape. The other part is we can re-enhance and tell people that ratepayers have been very, very conservative and have saved us a lot of water. More so, East Bay might have announced that they had saved 45% of what had been predicted. We've been doing more than that. So we have the water capacity, and the infrastructure is going to be built, but I really think that people need to understand the importance of our responsibility providing when a developer, and if a developer is asking for this, they're paying upfront costs. And a lot of people are misinformed thinking we're paying for it. It's not going into our capital improvement project. It is not going to be a charge there, so we have to be cautious. So anyway, that's my feeling.
Thank you, Director Anzini. Director Day, please.
Yeah, a couple of points to piggyback on Director Dwyer's comments of, we're not, even though some expressed an opinion on this project, we as a board are not, and we're not approving this project. They still have to go through the county planning process and the county supervisors and planning commission and deal with the traffic issues and growth issues and all that sort of stuff. But we're just saying, and I know not everybody understands it, but we do have the capacity to provide water. And in fact, I believe if we have the water, we're required, this is not an optional vote for us. We have to provide the water. Am I correct? We can't vote no on this. We couldn't deny them.
That is a complicated question, and there are many factors that would influence that. But having said that, generally speaking, the district has a duty to serve customers that meet its requirements when the district has available supplies, which the study indicates we have.
All right, thank you.
And just to mention that this parcel and most of the parcels in the Bass Lake Hills Pacific Plan area are not annexed into our service area now. They're in our sphere of influence. They'll be back probably once the EIR is approved to have you consider annexation of these parcels into our service area.
Right. Director Anzini?
And that has to go through LAFCO, isn't it?
It goes
Yes.
through LAFCO first,
So you're
and
responsible.
then EID, and actually the Bureau has to approve it also since it comes from Folsom Lake.
Yes, Director Osborne, and we'll get to the.
We do have the water to sell, and for us that live east of Ponderosa Road, or quite a bit east of Ponderosa Road, the more water we sell, we have the capacity and the ability to serve. The less pressure there is on rates. And so the more we can sell and deliver, it has a direct impact on our ability to hold the rates down.
And I'll just conclude with, Mr. Brink, you've done a great job presenting the facts. We are fact-based and the findings support that, so I will be in favor of this, but we'll give the public the opportunity to move this, or to discuss this any further. Jen, do we have anybody in the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, Jen, do we have anybody in line?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Veerkamp does not appear. We have any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 10, option 1, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Dwyer. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you very much. I believe now we're going to go to item 6, our cost of service analysis workshop.
Before Jamie starts, I did do a public outreach to some of the ag folks because the ag rates were going up significantly, or that was one of the proposals. So I asked them to be here and share their concerns, and we'll talk more about that public outreach I did for that customer class.
Okay. For full disclosure as well, I've been contacted by a couple of ag folks as well within the last week. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, board members. I'm Jamie Bandy, Finance Director for EID. I'm here this morning to present another workshop on our water and sewer revenue study. Okay, just some brief previous board action. Our last cost of service analysis did happen in the spring of 2020. At the time, the board did adopt those rates. Since then, earlier this year in 2023, we did begin preparation for the current analysis that we are going through. And then June 12th and August 14th of this year, the board has participated in workshops like today for this study. Okay, summary of issue. Today's workshop will include an overview of the cost of service and the rate design analyses. And some background discussion. Again, just as a reminder, the process of developing the rates must meet, they must meet but not exceed the cost to provide services, and the district is required to follow Prop 218 guidelines. And then just some information on the two items, the two components of today's workshop. The cost of service analysis proportionally allocates the revenue requirements to the customer classes, whereas the rate design analysis considers what rate structure will best meet the district's need to collect the rate structure, the rate revenue. And then before we continue on, before I invite Greg up to continue with the workshop, I just wanted to point out a couple of items today that are included in the AIS. So the draft financial plan that we presented to the board at the August 14th meeting identified the need for a 12% revenue increase for the water, for the drinking and recycled water throughout the next 5 years, as well as a 3% revenue increase for wastewater. And again, just to kind of reiterate, the increases are necessary to meet our operating expenses, our bond coverage requirements, fund our financial reserves, as well as cover our debt service for our outstanding bonds. Since that August 14th meeting, ongoing analysis and further quality assurance and quality control of those financial plans did identify some inconsistencies. So the appropriate corrections have been made, and those changes are included in the financial plan that will be presented today. Those adjustments include a decrease of $3.5 million to the water rate revenue, as well as an increase of roughly $5.5 million to the debt service for the water utility, and an increase of approximately $19 million to the debt service for the wastewater utility. To help offset those changes, Brian mentioned earlier during his CIP presentation that we did increase the 2024 and 2027 proposed debt issuances to $60 million and $120 million respectively, thereby decreasing the amount of pay-as-you-go funding that we need for the projects and using more of that debt funding for the projects. And then lastly, as Brian also mentioned, guidance from our external auditors also informed us that our water and our recycled water tank operation, the recoding costs, moving forward, we can capitalize those. So we were able to remove those costs from the water and recycled water operating expenses and include those in the CIP. And then Jim briefly discussed our direct assignment allocation. And so I just kind of wanted to mention again, this is also in the AIS, that the direct assignment customers, there are special considerations in terms of allocating those costs associated to the delivery and the level of water service. So the district used a 3.9% of the total fixed assets value in the rate models that you'll see today to determine that final cost allocation, which is about 2% higher from the prior cost of service study. So at this time, I'd like to invite Greg Klumpner up to the
If I could
podium.
interrupt
Yeah,
before Greg
absolutely.
goes, just because this translates right into the PowerPoint. If you could pull up the old 2012 DA study, the assignment. Back in 2012, when we did the study back there, we did a direct assignment, which is an allocation of cost to the ag industry, the ag, I guess, rate needs. And in that study, you'll see up here, that was the Appendix C of the 2012 study. And in that study, if you could scroll down a little bit, in that highlighted area, I don't know if you can blow it up, but there it goes. Thank you, Jen. As you're calculating how you would, okay, there we go. How you would allocate the 9% out of this whole formula, the committee talked about over the last decade from 2001 to 2009, the ag industry significantly reduced their water usage with IMS and all that stuff. So the committee decided that there should be a reduction of 32% in the allocation to the direct assignment, which reduced from 3.9 to about 2% allocation to ag. As we were reevaluating all the assumptions that went back in 2012, we wanted to look at, what did the other customer classes do too? And since that time, in 2021, these are the numbers I have, single family actually reduced significantly as well. For example, in 2001, we had 30,000 plus or minus single family customers. To date, we have 40,000. Usage back in 2001 was about 19,000 acre feet. Today, it's 16,000 acre feet, so it's a significant reduction. So as our internal team, and ag back then, they had used in 2001, about 5,000 acre feet, and today they're using about 4,600 acre feet, although their numbers increased significantly from 342 to 669. So even though their numbers went up, they also conserved. So as we're evaluating how do we move forward from this direct assignment to 2023 assignment, staff internally to the district thought we should not continue with that allocation reduction of 32% for the direct assignment. So what you'll see in the presentation, a more direct assignment of 3.9% to ag, which of course increases their rate significantly. There's some opportunities to address that. Given this change, I met with the ag guys, I think it was last Thursday. We've had a good partnership over the years. I said, guys, this is kind of where we're heading, and I want to make sure you're aware of it and join us at the meeting, and we have a good representation from the ag industry there And I said, well, we can address it. You can make your comments to the board because this is a workshop. Essentially, we're collecting twice as much revenue from about, and these are rough numbers, instead of about $850,000, almost 1.5 million, which almost doubles their rates. In some cases, more than doubles it. Really affects the high water user and large meter ones. Single family, it's not so bad. But I asked them to be here, and there would be a suggestion I made to them is they could recommend something to the board, like either have this implemented over time, not all at once, so it's deferred, or possibly a reallocation of non-rate revenue to address this essentially rate shock, which we all want to avoid as well. So they're going to be here wanting to make some comments to this as well. But I wanted to explain this before we go through the detailed study that you'll see in just a moment. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jim. And now I will invite Greg up to the podium.
Good morning, members of the board. I'm Greg Klumpner with NBS. I'm the project manager and director of this study.
Could you raise the mic up? Thank you.
Okay. So just as an overview summary, the last cost of service study was actually done in 2012. The 2021 was kind of an across-the-board adjustment. So we've actually gone back and looked at all the original detail, gone through the methodology again. So this is the first in 11 years that we've actually looked at what's happened to all of the different components that go into a rate study. So forward. So prior, Jamie went over the changes in the financial plans. We've got a summary of that in a couple of slides coming up. But we've done the financial plan part. We're talking about the cost of service and the rate design analysis today, which basically is the methodology that you use allocation factors to assign costs to different customer classes, to determine their revenue requirement, and then the rate design is how do you collect that revenue requirement from those individual customers. Next slide. Excuse me. Next one. And next one. So this is just really a summary of what Jamie's gone over, the different changes. Some things have gone up, some things have gone down. We started looking at the actual debt service from the different revenue bonds and how that was allocated to each of the individual utilities. So this just summarizes kind of what Jamie was talking about just a minute ago. Next one. And then we felt it was important to give the actual details of the new financial plan. So all of those changes that you saw in the previous slide, they're built into this new financial plan. So those of you who are focused on numbers, here's the numbers for you to look at. And then this is kind of an overview of the financial plan itself. The upper left slide basically shows that the increasing costs are going to need to be addressed by increasing rate revenue. The dark line there is your current rate revenue. Obviously, it's not going to meet the needs. Coverage is a very important, so the lower left looks at the coverage ratios with the rate increases. The green line is what you need to stay above. The upper right graph there, ideally we'd like to, well, preferably the dashed blue line at the top would be the ideal. If that, you'd be pretty flush with cash if you could meet that line. The green line is kind of the minimum recommended target. So, this shows that with the rates and the capital improvement programs, we're kind of we're kind of stressed a little bit to cover these costs. So one thing that would tell you is that the rates are not excessive. They're just meeting the needs, and we're not really even keeping up with the minimum reserve targets. And then the bottom right slide, this is kind of the crux of a lot of the issues. The capital improvement program costs are just, they're generally the thing that drives rates. So the light blue line there is the cumulative, the dark blue is the annual costs, and you can just see how those are going up over the next 5 years. So next slide. Okay, next one. So just as an overview of the cost of service, there's different ways that you allocate commodity costs, system capacity costs, and customer costs. The commodity costs are variable, the other two are fixed. Next one. And then those three components, commodity, capacity, and customer, have their own allocation factors, and these are the factors by customer class. So essentially, these are used to allocate those revenue requirements to each customer class. The next slide. So this is really the result of that. When you take the costs that occur in each of these commodity, capacity, customer, and the public fire protection, and multiply them times those allocation factors, this is what you come up with, revenue requirements for each customer class.
And Greg, just for clarity, this is for the potable water
Potable water.
system, not the ag rate system. Okay.
Right, we'll do the direct assignment ag rate system, same process after this. Okay, so then the rate design part is where you calculate both the fixed and the volumetric charges. This is the calculation of single-family tiered volumetric rates. So you take the $16.3 million that was allocated to single-family customers for the commodity costs. Prop 218 does require that you demonstrate the cost basis for this. We've looked at how the costs occur within each of these tiers. Most of the costs that are the highest are during the summer when there's peak demand, peak energy use, and so forth. Lowest in the winter. That's reflected in the quantities within each of these tiers, and there's a process that we went through, a detailed cost allocation to allocate percentages of costs to the different tiers, and that's how we came up with the cost differences by tier, and that drives the highlighted yellow volumetric rates on the right there. Okay. So the same calculation, basically the revenue requirements that were allocated to the raw water customers, ag raw water, is that total rate revenue almost $880,000 divided by the total projected consumption. That gives you your rate there highlighted in the yellow. And we assume that they're up to 4,500 cubic feet was assumed to be residential, and after that, the ag rate applies to those customers. Okay, so here's the base charges, and these are obviously increasing by meter size, just because that reflects the demand on the system. So essentially, this is taking the revenue allocated to different customer classes. This is the single-family residential here.
Pardon me, I had a question while this chart is up.
Sure.
Is there, and we talked about it before, looking at trying to compress the rate schedule a little bit so it's simpler and easier to understand. And this is where, did we look at you know, really, what is the differential between the 3/4, 1 inch, 1.5? You know, could they all be put into one, just to simplify things? Was that actively looked at?
Yeah, we did discuss that from a technical standpoint and a financial standpoint. The difference in the number of customers and what they actually use, what their demand is generally how you try to allocate costs out. Now, I think it's very often that 5/8 and 3/4 inches are treated the same. They're basically single family. Sometimes 1 inch is, in this case, 1 inch with private fire services is treated as a 3/4 inch customer. But when you look at the differences of 1 inch and above, there's still significant enough difference that we didn't feel that they should be included, so.
Based on the hydraulic capacity of the meter size. You know, as you incrementally increase that size, of course, the rates go up based on that capacity.
Director Dwyer?
I guess, Director Day, if I understand your comment, at the extreme, you'd collapse all of these into one rate, no matter what the...
Theoretically.
Yeah, no matter what the meter size or service line size. I'd just like to point out that would have a really major impact on the majority of our users who are the smaller thing, and combining those would drive their rates and connection or fixed base charges up. So I think it's probably wise for the board to leave that pretty much alone.
Yeah, for example, you know, in the cost service analysis, it's not just, you know, follow these procedures. If we looked at, let's say, 1 inch and 1.5 inch and looked at their average consumption and it was real close to what the 5/8 and 3/4 use, I wouldn't have a problem with doing that. But when we do look at it, there are significant enough differences that from a cost of service basis, it's better. You're opening yourself to a challenge if you do that. Okay, next slide. Okay, commodity charges for the raw water customers. And as we mentioned, the up to 4,500 cubic feet is single-family rates. And then, so there's the single-family residential rates above there. And then the rest of the rates are what are calculated. That you see the 0.005404 number was the ag rate that we showed in the previous slide. So this is just the result of dividing the revenue requirements by the consumption, projected consumption. Okay, bill comparisons. This is always what I found the most important part. So when we look at typical consumption for different customers, and this one shows a range of consumption. So the 2,600 cubic feet is the average typical, but this shows how it affects customers from the low consumption level to the higher consumption levels. So the difference, you know, for the average customer, 125 goes to 142, 21.
I had a question, well, because I have this one pulled up on my screen as well, is I was looking for, and I thank you for doing this, but I was looking for then the extrapolation for the residential water bills over the 5-year period. I did see it for some other things. I didn't see it for the residential water. I don't know, did I just miss it? Is it in here, or did we still need to do it?
I think it's farther on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's look
it didn't
at
look like it was for single-family water.
So I'll make one comment. I kind of hate to call this the summary presentation because it's like 70-some slides or whatever, but there is a more detailed one that is the companion to this, which has been expanded. So that does have more detail in all of the different areas. I think it's in here. Let's
See, yeah.
let's take a peek and see. Okay, so these are the 5-year projections for the different customer classes. So single-family on the upper left, multifamily upper right, small farms, and then the commercial industrial on the bottom right.
So,
And
so again, sorry to interrupt again, but so this is headed the right direction, but it's an average, and I'm really.
these are typical customers, yes.
Yeah, not, averages are always suspect. I like when we break it out with the low, medium, and high.
Yeah.
Because people are able to look at that and find themselves, I think, a little more easily. Because there is no average customer. We have people all over the place.
Well, it's somewhat of a bell curve. It's, as, you know, anybody's had statistics, bell curves are, you know, smooth in the middle and the tails are the same. This is more like a highly, very steep at the beginning, and then the tail is long, long and skinny. So it's not an exact representation, but if you wanted, if you felt like it was something you wanted to see, we could bring back a graph that would show all those different levels over 5 years each. Those graphs tend to get pretty busy, but if that's what you'd like to see, we can.
Well,
show you
a
that.
graph or just simply a line, and I'll get to it, because on the 218 notice, I had some comments in that, because that's in the packet. But it doesn't even necessarily have to be, there's 5 categories here of users. It could be narrowed down to 3, as we've done in the past with low, medium, and high. And just simply a dollar figure. 5 years increase, change for the low, 5-year increase for the medium, 5-year increase for the high,
Yeah.
and just a dollar figure. Because that's, I think, easy then for people to understand.
We can do that.
Yeah.
And bring it back to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Before we leave this slide, too, since we did talk about the ag rates, and small farm does have a component of the ag usage there. You can see there is an impact even to the small farms, but it's much lower than the larger customers. It's like I'm trying to calculate, like $160 bi-monthly. So there is an impact, as you see in the footnote there, from 3.9 versus 2% allocation.
Right. It's always a little bit of a challenge to figure out how much information to give people without overloading them. I've been accused in the past of hiding the ball because there's too much information and I don't know how to make sense of all this. So whatever works best is fine with us. We've got all those numbers. So next slide. So this is, again, for people that are number-oriented versus graph-oriented. This kind of breaks things down into what the typical customers for each of those 4 classes are, what their increases are in the top, the actual dollar increase per month or by month in the middle, and then what percent that is. So as you can see, the first year there are cost of service adjustments. Because this has been looked at in about 11 years, there are differences between customer, how costs are allocated to customers based on the allocation factors, number of customers, their consumption levels. All of that tends to shift over time. Some go up, some go down. So 24 is kind of represents the difference. Some, in some classes going up and some going down. The rate studies typically have a test year, which is the cost of service year 24. After that, the adjustments are made across the board. So that's why everybody has 12% from then on. Okay. Now sewer. So these, again, there were fewer changes in the sewer financial plans, but the net result was there was about $9/10 of $1 million on average higher revenue requirements than in the August financial plan. And then again, here's the revised financial plan with all the different details. And then the same charts showing, okay, the chart in the upper left, same kind of thing. To meet the revenue requirements, you're going to need to have the increased rates, although it's 3% instead of 12%. Since the district does coverage on a district-wide basis, this is the same chart as you saw in the water for the coverage at the bottom. And then, again, the ending cash balances, this would indicate, again, you're kind of stressing your system to cover all these costs without raising the rates more. You'd ideally like to be at that, at least at that green line there. And then the bottom right one is just a summary of the capital improvements over the 5 years.
And Greg, before you leave that one, sorry, I didn't catch you. In 2029, the board's going to have to address that because we're eating out of reserves. And you can't continue to draw down reserves.
Okay. So the same kind of cost service analysis is done for sewer customers. The flow-related costs are variable. The effluent-related reflect capacity and treatment. That's fixed, and the customer costs are fixed. So here, again, is a summary of each customer class and their percent allocation factor based on the actual numbers. So for flow, BOD, TSS, and the number of accounts, this is the way those costs are assigned to each customer class. The next slide. Again, this is the same summary of the revenue requirements by customer class. The cost classification up at the top shows the total allocated to each of those types of costs, and then based on those allocation factors, how much goes to each customer class for each of those subgroups. And down at the bottom then is their total revenue requirement. So then the same kind of analysis, the volumetric rates are the result of the revenue requirement divided by the estimated volume for each of the customer classes. So currently in the commercial class, you have 5 customer classes listed on the left, low to high. There's actually no customers in the high. So we thought this would be a good time, since looking at rate design is always a chance to improve the rate design. So we looked at condensing that to 3 customer classes. So we, combined the medium, low, and the medium into one class. And as well as combining those classes and creating new rates, we also adjusted the fixed monthly charges. So the commercial low is similar to the single family, and then, what's that, about twice for the medium, commercial medium. It's about twice the fixed charge, and then the medium high is higher than that. We just felt that it was more appropriate from a cost service basis to not charge this high fixed costs. And the difference between customers that have low effluent flows and high effluent flows, this would better reflect their cost of service. So that's what we're proposing, and the little note down there in the yellow box kind of explains that in more detail, but we just felt that this was kind of an obvious improvement that probably should be made.
No, it is. It's good, but like question, what customers are typically in the low category? What types of customers are typically medium versus high?
He says,
Anticipating that question? Just got to find it in my stack.
and I will say, in 2012, when we finished that last cost service study, we went to this, the customer classes here. There were like 36 or 40, something like, there were individual customer types, restaurants and gas stations, and everybody felt like that was just didn't make any sense. So, yeah, made an improvement back then, we're proposing another one now.
This is the old schedule, but I'll combine the low strength and medium. Things like general merchandise, market, but no butcher, baker, or grinder, a nursery, medical offices, a bar without a restaurant, auto station, a hospital, believe it or not, meat packers, other health services. The medium strength would be manufacturing of like wood products, machine shops, paint, and medium high would be bakery, donuts, catering, restaurant with bar and food preparation. I can provide this to the board just so you have the things, but I'll have them consolidated in the new three-tiered rates.
Yeah, just, I want to go through it again just to, because, you know, restaurants are continuing to struggle. They were struggling before COVID, and it's not gotten any easier for them. And, you know, this is obviously can be a significant cost for them.
You know, but we're reducing the high fixed costs, which should help, and if they can help conserve, you know, it should help their bill.
Okay. Yeah, next one. Okay, we'll have the base charges here in a minute, but the recycled water cost allocation factor. So this is the same process that we go through for the water in the sewer. You've got the allocation factors for flow and peaking, and then the number of meters for these three customer classes. And the next one shows the revenue requirement and how that comes down to the revenue requirements by customer class for each of these categories. That's what's used to calculate the rates in the next slide. So here's the basic volumetric rate, the basic charge and the volumetric rate. So the dual plumbed customers, their base charge is the 3116. That's also reflected in the water base charges, because that's a kind of a different type of customer if you have dual plumbed. And then the commodity rates are down at the bottom. And again, the working group that we were working with felt like the type of service is pretty much the same for rec turf, commercial landscape, and dual plumb residential. So in terms of, it didn't really make sense to try to distinguish the differences between the service for each of these customer classes. So we thought it would be best to combine that into one single rate, which is what that is, with the exception of the dual plumbed, which has the 4,500 cubic feet that is residential before it goes into the recycled rate. Yeah, and then here's the base charges for sewer with the alternative base charges there in the yellow in the middle.
Greg, did we take into account, because we talked about it before, the fact that we supplement potable water with the recycle? Would that be more likely, I guess, reflected in the commodity charges versus the base? But did we add in and factor that in to
Yeah.
assign costs?
Yeah, so the cost of potable water for those users during those peak periods, that's gone directly into the actual cost allocated to them, yeah.
And given some of the legislative bills coming out that we can't use potable water on non-functional, I think it's non-functional turf, we're looking at alternative ways not to do that. Dan Corcoran's come up with some good ideas, and we're exploring that. But right now, that cost is included. But if we go to the next slide, this is the one I wanted to highlight. There is some discussion, I might be stealing your thunder, Greg, but
Please.
in the tiered recycled, there was some discussion, why should some of our single-family dual plumb customers pay significantly more than some of the commercial landscape or rec turf? So I thought, how can we simplify it and make it more uniform? So this should help the recycled single-family home customers as well, and simplify the rates.
Yeah, again, the same kind of bill comparisons for these customers. So here's the single family. With the 3% increase over the 5 years each year, the rate increases are not going to be as big, but also this kind of reflects that there hasn't been as many changes in the different consumption and number of customers as there were in water. So these are typical bills for single-family sewer customers.
And as Greg's running through these slides, after we prepared the board package and the draft 218 notice, we thought, well, we should really expand it to, instead of 6 pages, to 8 pages. And a lot of these slides you see now is in a second proposal I'll share with you on the 218, which really discloses much more information to our customers.
Yeah. So for the multifamily and the commercial low, there were some of those the cost of service-based changes that we talked about. And these just basically, when you look at things kind of from a blind standpoint and like, here's just the numbers. We're not looking at what customer classes, we're just looking at what their numbers are and how they've changed in the last 10, 12 years. So there was a greater increase for the single family, for the multifamily and the commercial low. So oddly enough, for the commercial medium, their bill actually went down some, and then there are fairly minimal increases for the medium high. Okay, and here's the recycled bill comparison for single family, and then the same comparison for each customer class, what their current bill is, what the projected bills are, then what the actual dollar change per month is for their bills, and then what percent that is. Okay, so when you combine the two, this is, when you look at adopting rates, which are water and sewer, it's good to look at what's the combined impact for the different customers. So this is the 5-year projection. The current rate or current bill is on the left there. And then you see the total impact. The numbers in the middle are the bills for the sewer and the water, and the combined is on the top. So believe me, with all the changes in California water and sewer, these increases are not bad. I don't mean to say they're not increases. I've been in places where they have kicked the can down the road, and some of these things like go up by 60-70%, because they have no other option. You guys have been pretty good at keeping things up, improved, incurring the costs as you need to. So it's not like these rates are real severe as they could be.
My one comment, whoops, if you go back one, Jen. One comment on this, you have to blink your eyes a few times when you're looking at it. If you just take each one separately, it's a good graphic.
You might see a piece of toast there.
But it's the combination, and I know why you did it. It's convenient to get it all in one place, but this kind of graphic would be too hard.
Yeah, that's not in the proposed
Right.
218.
Thank you.
So, but if you just look at each one individually, it's a good graphic because it's self-explanatory.
Yeah, and probably the best way to do it is take the single-family water individually, and then the sewer one, look at those individually, and then look at this one for the combined.
So I have just a comment on, not on this particular graphic, but I really do think that going through all the graphs that we had, sometimes it talks, you're breaking out the average, but it's not clear that it is, some are, say, bi-monthly, others don't. And so, I think it's really important for people when they see I don't know which chart it was, that this is based on a monthly average, or is this is based on a bi-monthly? And see, some of them didn't say that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's really important that, you know, I know when I get my bill, I go, ooh, then I remember it's a
It's a
two-month
two-month
bill,
bill,
you
right.
know, that I look at that. So, not everybody looks at that.
Right, and it's easy to miss too. It is on this one, but,
Yeah,
you know,
it's little words.
right, it's little words.
That
And a little
reminds me,
box.
because that's a really good point, but on our bills, we've talked about, you know, we don't want to read the meters more often, there's a lot of, too many millions of dollars expenses on that. But a simple, possibly, change would be to show on the top of their bill, their monthly average. Here's the total bill, and then that's your, and it helps remind people that this is every other month. Because, for instance, in Folsom, they bill monthly. And people that are comparing oh, hey, wait, my friends get this Folsom bill and it's $250. Well, dang it, I got a $500 bill. Why is mine so much different? So I think we need to lean into that
Yeah.
and remind people that it's bi-monthly.
And we also know it's gonna cost us $12 million to go on a monthly,
Well, we can't do that,
No.
but yeah.
all right.
Okay, so here's,
And it doesn't say it. Oh, yeah, there it is.
I
Right
think
there.
this is probably the most important chart in the presentation, because it does show the impact, the dollar impact on the average residential customer for both water and sewer on a monthly basis.
There you go.
And it's the $9.81 increase is a monthly increase. So while 12% sounds really high, you know, your bill is gonna go up one pizza every,
If it's
Month.
based on monthly, my bill's going up, when I get the bi-monthly, it's gonna be $22 more.
it's gonna be 18 on the first
Yeah.
year. And yes, it does compound, but the actual dollar impact on the average customer is not devastating in my view.
And I'll get back to I'm not comfortable with averages. I think showing the low, medium, and high, or, because as Greg was pointing out, it's not where, our customer users are not, it's not a classic bell curve.
right.
So, yeah, it's a mitigating factor that the sewer rates are not going up as much for the majority of residential customers who are combined. But it's still, and to Lori's point, maybe we need to make this a bi-monthly, we need to pick one or the other, probably bi-monthly, because that's how our bills are done.
Director Osborne?
I think I'll make my comments when we get to the next steps and hold off on, I'm going to specifically talk about the ag issues, okay?
I
And-
like
and this
pizza,
one,
Director
the-
Dwyer, so I'm holding out for that extra pizza a month. Sorry, some of us like pizza. Yeah. Greg, go ahead.
Wait for the next slice. The 8% on the top there, you know, this doesn't matter whether that's monthly, bi-monthly, annual. That's the increase, whatever unit you use. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now we've combined the sewer, water, and recycled. So these are specific set of customers. And if you blink even more, I don't know, what do you see, cinnamon toast or whatever?
Jesus.
Yeah. And then here's that same bill comparison, the monthly increases versus the total increase. So first year's the 9.7, and then they're in the 6-7 range. Okay. So obviously, we want to have whatever input and direction you'd like. There will be a meeting on the 23rd. We could review this again, or at least show some updated slides. This is where we, I guess, get the rest of your input.
President Veerkamp, not to supersede board comments, because I don't want to do that. The ag guys have been here, and they're going to be out there picking again. And with the raining or misty, if we could, I'd love to have them come up and get their, say their piece and then get back to work, just because it's crunch time for those guys.
Oh, you guys good with that?
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep, yep. All right, please, Spokesman Rinaldi, looks like. Are you Spokesman Rinaldi or are you individual Rinaldi?
I am.
All right,
Good morning, Board.
nice to see you, Mike.
Michael Rinaldi, President of the Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau is an organization that's been in place in this county for over 100 years. I mention that because it represents a very long and historic collaboration between the agricultural community and EID. And we're happy to see that that collaboration is continuing and that cooperation is continuing. Thank you for conducting this workshop. And I appreciate the comprehensive board packet as it describes the methodology that is used for allocation of costs. And, you know, I seem to recall somewhere in that board packet the proposed simplification of the classes. I think that if I understood that correctly, that's a very good idea. I want to thank Brian and Jim for taking our calls and being available for the questions that the ag community has had and will probably continue to have. And I sincerely hope that we can move forward with the Prop 218 process without a food fight between the various classes. I don't think that that would be helpful for anybody. Our agricultural economy has enjoyed about a 10-year steady climb. And that's a really healthy trend because a hockey stick tends to be pretty unstable over time. But, you know, we have hit the wall. And that wall was the extreme fire and weather events that have occurred. And I don't want to belabor that point too much because, like farmers who have been out in the field dealing with infrastructure problems and results of the flood and the frost, so have you, and so have your staff working in smoky conditions and unfavorable weather conditions. So, you know, we have a whole lot in common in that regard. Our agricultural economy has been impacted by those extreme events to the tune of about $31 million in lost crop value. That's a pretty significant amount from 2021 to 2022. It's a pretty significant gut punch for the agricultural community. In contrast to our neighbors in Placer County, who have the benefit of International Transportation Corridor, I-80, they also have had historically access to a transcontinental rail line that helps get their products, you know, across the country. In contrast, ours is much more centric around a visitor-serving use. And it speaks to the culture and the economy of El Dorado County, and one of the things that makes us uniquely different. The agricultural community recognizes EID's improvement to the reliability of your system and the resiliency efforts on those systems. But of course, we're here today to talk about the affordability. And, you know, our general plan was intended to preserve and protect ag. And we will be significantly challenged in doing so if the rates aren't favorable for agricultural pursuits to continue. I think just the specter of higher water rates for agriculture will stall any pending or future investments and can significantly impact existing agricultural investments. And we worry about that. And I think that you're sensitive to that, and we've heard that today, and we look forward to that moving forward. You know, the agricultural economy for El Dorado County is part of our way of life. And it has an impact on our property values. It has an impact on why people come to El Dorado County and why they stay here. Now, I know you know all of this, but it's worth recognizing that in the context of what's just happened with the extreme environment and with the loss of agricultural crop, because we want to try to maintain that to the best that we can. A significant increase in costs would significantly impact. And those of you who know me or have worked or served with me know that I'm not a big fan of scaremongering hyperbole, but this could really be bad for agriculture if we're not able to navigate this appropriately. And so, you know, a shrinking agricultural sector would be bad for farmers, it would be bad for the county, it would be bad for EID. So, you know, thank you in advance for continuing to work with the agricultural stakeholders, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm Tom Sinton with Starfield Vineyards. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to bring some of our issues to your attention in a workshop format. I think that's very helpful. I thought I would try to put some of this in context in terms of how this impacts the ag community, because you have a daunting task in front of you. Looking at that set of slides, the infrastructure in EID is pretty sophisticated, and you're obviously going to have to cover the cost somehow. But as farmers, we live in kind of a different world than you live in. So I thought first I would look at what some of the neighboring counties charge for water, for ag water, and when I do this, I always put in the Turlock Irrigation District, even though that's not neighboring, because they were some very smart farmers who were able to leverage the city of San Francisco building Hetch Hetchy. They're the low water cost in the state of California, as far as I know, so it's about $3 an acre foot for water. And by the way, I'm doing this in acre feet, 43,560 cubic feet in an acre foot. So if you want to translate that back, you can do that. Somehow there were some smart people in Placer County. They got it. They're delivering water. This is based on a 2023 cost of service study for $43 an acre foot. YOLO I threw in there. That comes out of Berryessa, $54 an acre foot. Now we get into more of the comparables to us. Georgetown is $254 an acre foot. Nevada County is $273. I calculated my acre foot cost, and it's complicated in El Dorado County because it depends on how many meters you have, all that. So I was in this last year, 2022 to 2023, $230 an acre foot. So it was right in there comparable to Nevada County and Georgetown. Proposed, it's $484 an acre foot, so it's more than double. And then you can think of that going 12% a year, so it doubles in 5 years. So it's roughly $1,000 an acre foot in 5 years for water. So I put in, this year it cost me about $750 an acre to irrigate the vineyard. That's going to be $1,500 an acre in 5 years. That'll be about 20% of my total cost of production. So backing up in this, it's a big number. Okay, so it puts us right at the, I would guess this puts us at the top 5% of ag water costs in the state of California. It's a very significant number. If you look at the OSO chart, I would say those numbers stand up. I didn't have time to do the research and compare that, but if you look at their little map, that's what it looks like. I think as a background on this, since I've been in the grape business for a long time, I think I can speak to sort of the parts of the farming that you have up here in the foothills, which are which are vineyards and apple orchards typically. So the vineyards in this area, just so you know, and you should kind of keep this in mind, are basically not profitable. Okay, so they can get if you just consider the operating costs in the vineyards in El Dorado County. If you're really careful and you don't do anything, you might get your operating costs back. That's about it. You will not recover your investment cost of putting in the vineyard. On apple orchards, I'm pretty certain it's worse. So all of the small apple orchards that you have around here are marginal orchards. So when you raise an input, a cost to those people, you really do impact their business. And what are we going to see with this? We'll see abandonment of the agriculture. Now, I guess I qualify as a larger producer. Certainly in the water usage, I do qualify as a larger producer. And I'm not going to go out of business this next year, but the people who have made it up here from a financial standpoint are the larger producers that have developed markets that are outside of El Dorado County. So you need distribution, you need delivery to larger markets, whether it's Sacramento, California, or nationwide. The wineries that have made money have all been those wineries. That's a very small percentage of the wineries in the county. So there are probably only 10 profitable wineries in the county. There are 55 that are, the only reason they stay in business is because the owner doesn't take any compensation. I would say the same thing is true for Apple Hill Farms. There probably, if there are 60 Apple Hill Farms, only 10 of them are profitable. There are probably 50 of them that are just, people don't pay themselves. They just do it and they just break even. So when we talk about raising our water rates to the top 5% of the state of California, I do think we're going to see an impact on this agricultural economy that we have up here currently. And those of us who are the larger growers are really concerned that the smaller growers that add a lot of the color and the interest and all to this community are going to go out of business or make a decision. I mean, you're looking at water rates on vineyards that are, in 5 years, that are $1,500 an acre. A lot of people are just going to say no, just not going to do that. So if there's any way that you guys can figure out a way to mitigate this, to allocate either a combination of giving us time to react to it or potentially getting us closer to our peers in Nevada County and Georgetown, we'd really appreciate your consideration for that. Thank you.
A quick
Thank you, John.
Tom,
Yeah, Director Day.
First, I have to say my daughter is getting married next year, and she really wanted to have it at Starfield. And then she got discovered that you guys don't do that. She was really upset.
Well, you could change the water rates.
I knew you did. But I appreciate actually the info. Because one of my questions was, as a percent of your operating costs, how does water impact you? And you answered that. And then I like the per acre foot. If you could share that information, maybe send an email to the board as a whole with those numbers. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at Amador or Sonoma, that would be great.
Well, I did look at Amador.
Yep.
I apologize. Please do not send anything to the full board. Anything that you want, it's a violation of the Brown.
We
So,
get stuff from people all the time to the whole board. We just don't comment on it.
no,
Could I deliver this?
please, and I'll
she'll
make
take care of
sure that the board
And I have other
receives it.
information. If you want some of the other data, I do have it. It's about, right now, it's been about, it's costing me about $10,000 an acre to farm the grapes. So it's about, my water's about 750 of that right now, and it's gonna go to 1,500 of that. So it's a significant cost. And, you know, we're trying, there's a group of us here trying to elevate the vineyard community to make people aware of the quality of wines that we produce up here as a community. But we've kind of all got to hang together to make that happen. Great, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom.
For the record, because Mr. Sitton did provide this during the board meeting, I will provide it to the board, but it will also become part of today's record with the minutes of the meeting.
Right. Further,
And just, and I'm sorry, and that document will also be publicly available here at the district headquarters for anyone who would like to take a look at it.
Morning, all. Thank you,
Morning,
Mr.
Dave.
Chairman. Thank you, board and staff. David Bolster, serve on the Ag Commission, longtime Apple Hill grower. Just like to add a few comments about the economics and the dynamics of the wine industry. I happen to be in a unique position. I'm one of the very few people in the county. I'm at the pointy end of the spear in terms of, in my business, in terms of working with people buying and selling agricultural properties, vineyards and wineries in El Dorado. I happen to be in that position where I'm the first point of contact from people from outside of the county who are contemplating investment in El Dorado, people like Tom Sinton. I didn't work with Tim Sorrell, but if you look at Tim's operation and Tom's, you know, just what a great credit to everything that all of us in the room have done, that people from outside of El Dorado County are willing to invest 10, 12, or more millions of dollars in El Dorado agriculture. So I'm in that unique position. I'm also in a position where in my business right now, 10 to 12 vineyard winery listings. When you list a property, you get bombarded by all the trade publications, all the online trade publications. So I'm very familiar with the economics of the wine industry right now. And I can tell you that whether, Mike didn't want to be dramatic about it, but whether this is an existential moment for our industry, and for many players in the wine industry, that's a fair question. Out of the county, I have a very large winery operation, and we talked about the business of wineries and the distribution models. So fortunately here in El Dorado, Greg, and as Tom mentioned, we've got most of our wineries have that blend of so-called DTC, direct-to-consumer, tasting room, wine club, and distribution. If you happen to be in a place right now where your winery is primarily distribution, you better be Gallo. You better be a substantial player because you're suffering right now. I have with a winery broker in Sonoma, we have a very large winery outside of El Dorado County who's 100% distribution. We got a communique last week. Hey guys, can you hurry up? I'm hanging on by my teeth. So it's, times are tough right now in the wine business. We have a global wine glut. As I look around the room, I'm seeing all of us gray-haired people, us boomers. We are retiring, we're expiring. We're not drinking this wine anymore. And the boomer category, historically for decades, have been primary consumers of wine, but maybe not so much all of you people in here. So the demographics are changing in terms of wine consumption. Demand has dropped significantly, and when wine demand drops, grape demand drops. And Tom goes to the point of grape growers being basically in a marginally profitable, hopefully, situation. But if we see dramatic increases of water rates, that's the last straw. You know, after Caldor and the frost last year, 75 to 90% frost loss. So for a lot of our players in El Dorado, it is an existential moment, not just in terms of water rates, but in terms of the business itself. And I know you guys are focused on, as you should be, your operation and your agency, but I think it's valuable for people to understand what's going on in the industry itself. And to add a much substantially greater burden on water rates, it's going to be a real challenge. The irony is, the great things we do, I work with people who ship their wine in barrels, fermented wine in barrels, to Texas, to Michigan. Can't say who it is, but a new major winery buyer. He has a winery on Long Island, and he's going to process and ship the primary fermented wine to New York and Long Island. Gallo, the world's largest wine producer, just bought a 217-acre property in Dorado. What a wonderful testament to everything that Greg and all these people in the room have done to have the world's largest wine producer buy a major property in El Dorado. But that doesn't change the fact that, we've got some serious challenges as the industry coming up. So we understand the practical challenge you have in terms of a fair and equitable distribution of rates across your categories. But we also, would like the board to recognize that we have some serious challenges coming up, and also to recognize that the economic development benefits of the ag and wine industry across the board, and the contributions of ag historically. As we all know, Sly Park was built with ag in mind. And where would we be today without the tenacious, pit bull, brilliant Dick Aiken, and no Project 184? Grape grower, vineyard owner, Dick Aiken. So ag has contributed greatly over the years to the district, and will continue to do that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dave. Anybody else wishing to speak relevant to this? Come on up, Paul.
Good morning. Paul Bush from Madroni Vineyards and Rucksack Cellars. Thank you for this opportunity. In the interest of getting back out in the field, I'll keep it very short. Just wanted to say that one of the major draws for El Dorado County, in my opinion, is the rural atmosphere that we have up in this area. And farming, and especially small farms, is an important part of this, and I consider us all small farms. The proposed increases, I remember during the presentation where you were saying that you had seen in other areas increases of 60%, and that EID had done a very good job of keeping it reasonable. Well, we're talking about 100% increase for farms, and that doesn't seem reasonable, at least using your definition. I think the proposed increases will discourage ag. It will discourage ag. New and existing. Some farms will cease to exist at all and become blight on the area and the rural atmosphere as a whole. So in that, I think that the ag's contribution to EID will become less and less. This, I think, is a lose-lose proposition. The land values for all of us will decrease as we lose that rural atmosphere. So if there is a way that we can figure out different ways to help postpone or figure out how to finance this differently or whatever, I think losing farms versus just doing these increases, I think that I would tend to want to save the farms and figure a different way to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Morning, Charlie.
Hey, Charlie Mansfield. I manage Goldbud Farms, one of the last, but probably the biggest in the county, custom vineyard and orchard management companies still operating. So I just wanted the board to really take a deep look at its history, the county's general plan, some of its overlays. We have an incredible wealth of inventories of choice soils in this county. At Goldbud Farms, I'm able to export hundreds, almost thousands of boxes of fruit out of market, Martha's Vineyard, New York City, Chicago, all across the U.S. at double, triple the USDA's terminal market prices. The reason we're able to do this is because the quality of our ag districts, the quality of the product, is so far above the rest of the industry. I firmly believe that the farming that's happening in the Central Valley, as it relies more and more on groundwater, it's less and less sustainable. It's going to open up opportunities for El Dorado to replace that product in the marketplace as time goes by, if we can maintain some level of sustainable price increases with water. Rate shock will scare away new investors of orchards and vineyards. I can point to multiple stripes of properties in these ag districts that are ready to be developed to produce high quality, not just wine grapes, but apples, peaches, plums, nectarines, all at a competitive price. As more and more farming operations go under in the Central Valley due to unsustainable prices of water, unreliable wells, that market share is going to have to be replaced somewhere. So I would like the board just to consider what future investments might be available in some of these ag districts, and consider that if there's a way to use some sort of non-rate revenue to help keep the status quo there, I think the county will really see a return on those investments as some of these properties get put back in play over the coming years. Thanks.
Thank you, Charlie. Anybody else wishing to speak? All right. Greg? Hang on.
Sorry, just briefly, I just want to thank all the speakers. They have really outlined the potential impact on ag. I mean, I see my rate's going to go up 150%. It's just staggering. And I think of all the other small farmers here are going to just step back and say, what's going to be the long-term effect in our county, our tourism, all the benefits that the residential people appreciate. Maybe when they see we have a good water rate, they may not appreciate it, but the fact is that we're another benefit of living here in El Dorado County, plus all the benefits of the tourists coming up here, spending their money, and then going back home. So I want to thank Jim and Brian for keeping us up to speed on these developments of your cost of service study. We do understand your need to maintain and improve your facilities. I just want you to appreciate, and I'm sure you do, the long history and how that you are an irrigation district and how it was formed and who helped get all the water rights and Sly Park Reservoir and all those things due to the benefit of being an agricultural district. So I don't know how you factor that in, but I'm sure that we've worked with you for as long as I've been here, 50 years, and those of you who have been, the Veerkamps who have been here forever, appreciate the work that we've done cooperatively together. So I just hope we can continue in the future, keep our farms going so we have a diverse, unique community here in El Dorado County. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. All right, last call. Lloyd's contemplating. Hang on, George. You got a question particularly for Greg, or you want to let Lloyd speak?
No, I didn't see.
Mr. Walker.
Yes. I'm walking up right now. I'm Lloyd Walker with Walker Vineyard, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of a personal experience when I listen to all of these things. As I'm an example of how to keep things going, I should say. My family has been involved in agriculture like the Veerkamps for a lot of years. My grandfather came on the ranch in 1908. My wife and I planted grapes in 1972, and I've been at that for like 50 years. But as the saying goes, and now luckily I'm able to pass that on to my daughter and her husband, but as the saying goes in our family is you need to have somebody working off the farm so you can really support this. I worked for 35 years at Aerojet and was able to use that to be able to keep it going. And my daughter now is taking it over full time, and her husband is president and CEO of the California Rice Commission. So they're falling on the thing, you better have somebody to back it up, because with all the things that are happening in our industry and of course the water rates really puts a squeeze on being able to, as Tom said, to be able to meet your operating costs. I can't recall in my 50 years of being paid for any of the work we put in. And I know Ann is a, I question her sanity of wanting to continue with this, but thank goodness I'm able to pass it on, because it is we have 285 acres, which, if it goes under, here's an example of changing the landscape a little bit of it going into just residential. So just wanted to pass that on to you folks, and I am happy to see the next generation continue, and with any kind of luck, her children can keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. Okay. Jen, is there anybody online who wants to make a public comment before we bring it back to the board?
If members of the public would like to address the board on workshop item number 6, now is your time. Please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda, since it doesn't look like have anybody participating by phone. If you are on your computer and you'd like to make a comment, hover down toward the bottom of your screen, click that raise the hand button. It'll notify us on this side, and then we will allow you to speak.
Not seeing any.
Oops. President Veerkamp does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on workshop item number 6.
Director Osborne, please.
Well, our speakers have alluded to some of the things that I have on my notes that I was prepared to talk about this morning. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned is even the Christmas tree farms. And I will tell you, I live right in the middle of Apple Hill. And the Christmas tree farms are inundated the day after Thanksgiving, and even some prior to that. Having said that, we have an unusual circumstance here where our ag community provides a huge employment opportunity for people in our community. Our property values are upheld and enhanced by this agricultural endeavors. People pay taxes, and the property values are increased every year because of the property values. I would like to propose that, I want to make one other comment. I know people that live in El Dorado Hills and Cameron Park and Placerville. I've been here for 24 years. I'm just a newbie. You're not an old timer unless you came over in a covered wagon, by the way. Anyway, the reason that they love living here is because it's agricultural, the wineries, all of the et-als are in their backyard. And we need to do everything we can to protect those agricultural endeavors. I would like to propose that the staff looks at non-rate revenues to offset some of these costs. I've talked to a lot of the small growers when this thing first hit, and they all say that it'll put them under. I mean, they just can't make it. But one of the most important things is how many people work that are employed because of I mean, it's astronomical. I can't tell you how many people work, but I know a lot of people do work in our agricultural endeavors. So I'd like to propose if we can look at some non-rate revenues and offset some of these costs. And with that, I'll ask that one of the other things that just dawned on me, the premise that piped water or potable water was used in agriculture is because the cost of the old ditches was so high. And to maintain those old ditches, the astronomical cost, it was cheaper to put water in a pipe and take it out of, and use potable water in deference to raw water out of the ditches, because the cost of maintaining those ditches was so high. So, having said all of that, I would like to propose that we look at non-rate revenues to offset some of these costs. And with that, I'll be quiet.
All right, Director Day, then Director Dwyer next.
Yeah, appreciate you guys' info and feedback, and I actually would like to ask staff to look at both non-rate revenue. I think I've said to some of you guys in the past that the cultural and aesthetic and community values of the ag community are significant, and I think it is an important part of the culture of El Dorado County. And so again, I think we should look at, I think it's good that we have, the costs need to be assigned and the costs are the costs. And I think that's compliment our consultant and Jim on doing that. But it is painful. It's going to be painful for everybody, for residential customers and everybody throughout. But I do think we should look at spreading out the increases, because that first year increase is crazy, spreading them out, and then looking at using non-rate revenue in recognition for the cultural benefits for the county to try to help mitigate. So I'm very open to those ideas, and I think we can explain it to our constituents, the benefits of it. So I'd be very open to that.
Director Dwyer?
Thank you, and thank you, Director Day. I really agree with your assessment. I think that when we gave instructions on setting the rates, there were a couple of tenets in those instructions. One was to avoid rate shock, and the other one was to help preserve the agricultural community, among some other instructions that we gave, reduce the rate classes. And I think we need to look closely and give direction back to staff and the consultant that says, we need to stay tuned to those tenets and take the ag rates and use non-rate, and this is a proposal or proposed direction to staff and the consultant, is use non-rate revenue sufficient to offset the increase and bring those average increases in the ag community to match the average increases in the residential community. In other words, about the 12% per year. I know that's still a hurt for everybody, but it's a hurt that's equal to what we're applying to our residential customers. So I would propose that the board give that direction, and then we proceed.
Director Anzini?
Without copycat and everybody, I agree on this proposal. I agree on the non-rate revenue. Thank you for bringing that. But I also want to see it stretched over, because we don't want sticker shock for all of our ratepayers. But the argument has always been, I've only been in El Dorado County 9 years, but my grandmother was born in 1888 in San Francisco. So, I have a long California relationship. He was an apple picker at one time. He was a grape picker in the Stockton area. So, agriculture is very important. It's the heart of California. It is the fruit basket of the United States. So, many people forget about that. The issue on the fairness of it is we also have ratepayers right now who are subsidizing ag. There's an argument to people and no growth anywhere. But we want it rural, but they don't want to pay for the water. So we have a lot of balancing going on, and I think we have to improve that announcement, come back with us with a new, with an addendum here. But it also gives us opportunity for our public information to feed this information, how important it is to the people who are not living up in the mountain area and think they're subsidizing ag rates. So, you know, it makes a difference, but it is also valuable that you came here to speak. And thank you.
Director Day?
President Veerkamp, if I could just to make sure that the record is crystal clear, because this is a point that can be very contentious. Currently, all of our rates are subsidized through our collection of property taxes, hydroelectric revenue, et cetera. Ag rates are not subsidized by other customer classes. There is no customer class that subsidizes one over the other currently. All of our customer classes are subsidized with non-rate revenue. I just wanted to make sure that's in the record so that, you know, someone doesn't say, hey, your minutes say that single family subsidizes ag.
And thank you for the clarification.
Director Day?
Yeah, just a last quick comment that I think this is a really healthy discussion. And I think my goal would be to keep it above board and very public of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I have no problem defending it to my constituents. But again, I think we just need to be super transparent about it. And I think we're headed in that direction.
All right, maybe I can wrap this up. I too believe non-rate revenue may be a solution. I would like to make sure that we direct staff to look at that. One of them would maybe even be TOT. The county has seen an increase in TOT annually, and they're giving it out to fire districts and others that are impacted by tourism. This is another area that obviously is a benefit, major benefit. Mike knows we did a fiscal analysis on ag a few years back. We can pull some of that information and utilize it to our benefit as well. And as we move forward, it may be the only way that we can keep things in check. It's certainly very important to keep ag at our forefront because it is what El Dorado County is. And I don't think it'll be anything other than that in my foreseeable future or the rest. George, you're going on forever, so. But it's just so important. I cringe at any rate increases given the state of our economy and the state of cost of things. But yet we too have to keep the lights on and the doors open and people employed, and that's not simple anymore either, right, Jose? Yes. We really appreciate everybody that we do have and the ways that we take care of them, but it's very complicated. So I think direction-wise, Jim, go ahead.
I think I have good direction on the ag issue, and that is either use non-rate revenue or spread out the increases or reduce the reserves that we collect for capital projects, because I don't want to redistribute the non-rate revenue from one class to another. So I'll bring something back by the 23rd with a proposal on that. So I think we've got good direction on the ag issue. I did want to cover the 218 actual notice as well at this meeting.
Okay. Jim, also, I think we all received an email about the city of Placerville. Where do they figure into this? You know, having a mother that lives in town know their rates are high now on both sides of it?
Yes, I've notified Cleve that we're doing a cost of service study. They don't fall under the Prop 218 process and was not included in the RFP under this analysis. Later on, I'll bring a proposal back to the board for consideration for what we would call wholesale rate to the city of Placerville, but they're aware of it.
Okay, it's something to keep in mind. I know at LAFCO last week, the city talked about maybe some sphere changes. And if anybody's thinking of annexing into the city, you want to make sure you look at all your costs, because I know the city's costs are quite high as well for water and sewer. Okay, so 218 discussion?
Yeah, so unless the guys have anything else, they can get back and do their job and pick the grapes before they go bad.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you very much, guys and gals.
As we prepared the 218 notice in the PowerPoint for today's presentation, we're thinking, how can we improve Prop 218 notice that we had sent out earlier, and you had a copy of that in the package. With all the extra PowerPoints in there, we're thinking, why not try and expand the 218 notice to include the ones you'll see in here? And it's really the last two, if you could pull up.
Okay, the first one is the one that was included in your board packet.
Yeah, so you can kind of go down to the second one. There you go. And keep going. Most of it's the same, but we expanded, keep going. Another one, we still have that graph in there. We have to have the rates in there. Next one. So we expanded what the average effect on single-family, multifamily, and farm, as well as single-family, dual plumb. Next one. And the board has this, so we're going through this quickly. But also really expanded on what happens with the sewer bills, because I think that's important as well. So if the board wants to give me direction on the 218 notice, the revisions will include some of the ag stuff we talked about, but other than that, we wanted to expand it. It may cost a little bit more, but I think it's much more transparent. Yes. I'm sorry? Yeah, 6 pages to 8 pages.
Yeah, Director Day?
Yeah, so I don't get misquoted, I have to make it clear that I'm still freaked out about the proposed rate increases and still questioning them. That said, I was pleased when I opened this and started reading it, is especially that first page, because that's where a lot of people.
Yeah, they won't go past that.
Right. I like the expansion of the charts in here, that's good, but I think that your top line on the first page is good as far as being informative. My suggestion would be, we have and I've mentioned it before, we have the average water customer here, and I'm uncomfortable with using averages. If we can do bullet point, because again, not necessarily for every year, but for instance, water customers, low, medium, and high, people want to know the big picture, the bottom line. And you give them you had some charts in there, Greg, that basically just 3 bullet points under water customer, 3 bullet points under water and wastewater, and that just say low, medium, and high, this is your 5-year increase, dollars and percent. And that's won't make people happy, but it's a simple, quick, this is getting much more transparent than before, but I think that would lend to it even more and help people to understand it more. The other suggestion, and I've only just occurred to us as we've discussed things, is, and Director Dwyer was pointing it out, the average cost for the combined residential water user and wastewater user, which is the vast majority of residential customers, that might be put in a box to highlight it and show that total 5-year dollar and percent increase to emphasize, or even put it at the top just to emphasize it.
We can certainly do that. We'll probably go to 10 pages because we'll have water only, which is about 40% of our customers. We'll have water, wastewater, which is about 35% of our customers. And then we'll have water, wastewater, and recycled customers. And we'll have to do high, medium, and low on all that. And I think it's going to be.
Well, for recycle, we won't, because
Well, we'll have to show the change. And a low recycled water customer and medium recycled water customer. And so we'll certainly expand it. What we're trying to do, and I hope we'll have an answer by this week sometime, is put the rate calculator back in here, so customers can do that. Now, it's a JavaScript, and I don't know Java versus Fortran when I was an engineer many years ago. We're trying to get that put together. If that's there, then I would recommend we put that symbol in there, and the customer can go online and just click on it and say, here's what it means to me as a customer.
I'll do something up on my computer and just send it to you guys, and you can take a look at it of what I'm visualizing that I don't think would eat up that much more space.
Okay.
I'll see what I can do.
Okay, good. Okay. Yeah,
Thank you.
the first page is gonna be all of it. If that many look at the rest of it, I'll be surprised.
Could be an area where
Jesse needs
I
to
mean, you
doll
gotta
it
have
up.
this,
Yeah, gotta have that.
but maybe we don't need two
Yeah.
pages of that.
No. Give me your suggestions. We're gonna try and have it ready to go to print, well, print and ready to go on the 24th of October.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, thank you for the feedback.
Okay, this is a workshop. Jen, let's give one more shot at anybody online. I doubt anybody's there, but just make sure the public has an opportunity.
This is a time for members of the board, members of the public to address the board for workshop item number 6. President Veerkamp, it does not look like we have any members of the public wishing to speak.
All right, very good. Anybody need a stretch break or?
Yeah.
Yep, let's take a few minute break, please, Jen. Good, we're strong. All right, we are back in session. We are on item 7, information item, Office of General Manager. Jim?
Thank you. Good morning. Once a year, depending when I can get to this, I'll present the key performance indicators. I think it's good news and a bad news story, but it gives the board a good idea how the district's being managed and some of our strengths and weaknesses, and I'd like to spend some time on this. Next slide, please. I won't go through the mission statement, but our guiding principles is something that we reinforce all the time internally, and that's the safety and respect for individual, excellent customer service, and fiscal responsibility. I must compliment the board because it starts at the top. The respect that you show for each other and to staff is remarkable, and we appreciate that. And I think it permeates through the district. Next slide. On safety, we're doing an okay job. We've had a couple more lost time injuries than I would like. But overall, we're doing fine. From an industry standard, we're doing outstanding. But from a perspective of lost time injuries, I always strive to encourage 0 lost time injuries, because if you don't have a lost time injury, then you don't have that ultimate fatality. And in our business, it's dangerous. So we always strive to minimize avoidable accidents, injuries requiring medical attentions, and lost times. But we're doing a good job, especially industry-wide. Next slide. This is a complicated formula, and only Jose could probably explain it. But overall, it looks good. We're again one of the lowest rates that JPI manages for us. So that's kind of a summary on that. Next slide. If you look at our water and wastewater and hydroelectric regulatory violations, we've had none year to date, almost through the year, and I'm really pleased with that. In '22, we had a bunch, primarily because of the big storms back in, I think it was February or January of last year. But overall, the guys and the operators really do their best to avoid any type of violations. Next slide. One thing for respect for the individual, we try and provide a positive environment where employees can speak up and present ideas, and they're treated respectfully and with dignity. And just, we do an employee engagement survey every 2 years. I actually shared this with the board probably 3 months ago or 4 months ago. The numbers were outstanding in many, many cases. 70, 80% of the employees respect it here, like it here, feel satisfied here. So I'm really, really pleased with that. And then also we use the Labor Management Committee to address issues that are not contract related, but hey, we got an issue with this or that. Let's talk about it. Let's make sure it's clear. And that's worked out real well over the last 15 years. Next slide. This one you saw before. I think Jenny Downey presented this. Our customer satisfaction survey is outstanding. And two things I'd like to highlight, and I'm not sure, I wasn't here. I think I was at a doctor's appointment or something. But the reasonableness of water rates and wastewater rates, I think that's a testimony on increased use of social media in communicating. In fact, I know it is because the last, Jesse, 4 months or so, we've been bombarding our customers with social media content about why we need rate increases for replacing Silver Lake Dam or because other low force main. And I think that's a reflection on customers seeing that constantly and saying, okay, I understand now that rates are needed to fix stuff.
If I could suggest, in the cost of service study, there are a couple of charts that do comparison of other districts that are similar. And it shows us pretty much in the middle for both water and wastewater.
It's coming up.
Yeah, okay. We probably need to get those out on the social media kind of
Okay.
thing too.
Good. Yeah, that's actually was in the 218 notice too. And I didn't say this in the cost of service study, but Amador just doubled their rates. Calaveras, I think, was like 90% over 5 years. So all the utilities are struggling with asset replacement. Next slide. Again, we're doing a great job in online bill pay customers and customers that we can use email addresses on. We certainly are careful not using the email addresses unless we really have to, because, you know, if you get bombarded too much, they're just going to take us out. So we don't want to do that. Again, all these subscribers and notification and reach and impressions, Jesse does a good job on that. I don't know what half these numbers mean, but they look good. And I see it on my Facebook or Nextdoor page, and it's like, okay, EID's replacing Silver Lake Dam, and I understand that now. So
long as people like the page, it gets up there.
yeah, I don't know what they do, but
Every board member needs to like the page.
I haven't seen any frowny faces or whatever the icon is, but anyway, I've had my kids sign it up too and do that every day.
Yeah.
That's why we have so many good impressions.
Follow them.
Yeah,
Follow Dad.
but whatever that means, Jesse, keep it up. This is an area we continue to struggle with, is the number of unplanned outages. I'm not sure I need to go into more detail, but we're at the bottom, below the bottom. And we just, like we've talked about in the capital improvement plan, assets are getting old out there, and you got to do something. So hopefully we just continue to work on replacing assets that are nearing it end of life.
And to Director Day's point, this is really a board responsibility because we pushed out some of the planned connection replacements, which is then going to drive more outages and less, a worse number. And the more we do that, the worse it gets.
And eventually you'll start seeing it in the customer satisfaction ratings. I mean, that's just unfortunately, I'm a byproduct of PG&E, and you saw that a lot. as the outages increase. Well, there's a number of reasons I left there. That was just one of them. Next slide. Number of water leaks, we're still, again, struggling with that. The SSOs, we're still doing a good job on that. Thank you for the vehicles and things we need to do all the inspections. I think that's a big deal to help out the people doing the servicing out there. We're keeping up barely with the number of fire hydrant service. I got to tell you, when I'm driving around the area and I see that bright red fire hydrant in the summer months, I think that gets a lot of attention from customers. I know my neighbor said, "Hey, why did you paint the fire hydrant?" And I tell them it's because we serviced it. And then, that's great, especially in fire season. So I'm real pleased with that.
Yep.
Again, yeah, well, send in a email to the thing. Oh, Dan couldn't stop on that one.
I couldn't resist, Director Anzini, because my church is in your neighborhood. So I asked Patrick the same thing last week, and just so the board knows that we adopted the regular painting of the hydrants latter in the most recent survey. So your hydrants in your neighborhood have been serviced. They will be painted and serviced next time. So yeah, so that because as Jim said, there's a
cut around one of those
yeah,
things 'cause they're growing.
as well as maintaining it. But I think it shows, it gives visual evidence we were there, as well as painting the valve box in the street. So, but I know I've gotten several questions. I wanted the same thing myself, so I harassed Patrick about that last week.
We have a bigger area to service, I guess.
So it's Patrick's fault?
That's right, Jim.
Again, here's the service line, plan versus unplanned, similar problem we've talked about. Next slide, meters. For those customers that don't believe we read the meters, we read them all the time, and very few are stuck meters. But when we find them, we'll go out there and get them fixed. I don't know what the... You what? Yeah. Well, like, George, we're in mixed company. I won't say anything. But I know Jenny and her team does a good job on that. Operating expenses. I think some of the results for '23 is we've just had turnover, and by the time you get someone in place, it just takes time to, fill it and then, provide the services in the field. Next slide. This is a low number. It's just some of the projects, like the drop-off road replacement. Some of that won't even occur till 2024. Some of the service line replacement's been delayed. Flume 47 was planned, but it's been, postponed because we're going to have a short outage. So we'd like to, my guidance to my team is, 80 to 90 or 100% of the capital we should try to do, because that will eventually catch us up on asset replacement, which was a big deal for the district, and we'll keep working on it. The performance ratios, we're still in good standing. Hopefully with the rates that we're proposing, we'll still stay in good standing. The 1.77 is higher than what the financial plan shows, but hopefully we continue to manage that and keep it high, especially when we're going out to bond next year. Debt management. You can see, it kind of goes up and down. We'll start paying off debt, and we did a lot of refinancing that took some of the debt off the books. Over the next 4 or 5 years, you'll see that number pop back up if we want to replace the assets that the board hopefully will approve in the CIP. Again, we're trying to do what we can to keep the assets in good functioning order, and hopefully a lot of the costs can be managed until 2036 when a lot of the debt falls off. But seeing what's in the field, that's going to be a challenge.
I think there's a tendency to focus on the outstanding debt number especially in the public and other forums I've heard, oh my God, how'd you let $400 million of debt? That's a horrible thing. How could you do that? But I would point out that in 2019, we had under $300,000 in debt, and we were spending almost $30,000 or $300 million in debt, and we were paying about $30 million to service that debt. The debt's gone up in '21 by about 30%, and the cost of services, that debt is half.
Yep.
So I think that's a real important point. The number that affects the rates and the customers is the debt service. It's not the outstanding debt.
Yeah. And we were fortunate and smart, I think, to take advantage of the low interest rates.
Let's say we were very wise. We were
Wise,
forced-
yes.
Yes.
But, we're converting all of that. Imagine if we had kept our variable debt, we'd be paying a lot more, but we had it locked in at a really advantageous rate. And then also some of the recent bond issues, maybe not as good as we had hoped, but not bad.
No?
It's scary, though, about what depends, we don't know what the market's going to be down the road.
Yeah, right now, I think we checked into the markets in the 4% range for our bond rating. So that's not bad. Again, you balance asset replacement, bonds, rates to keep the system well functioning. Next slide. This has always been, when we do our bond rating, the bond guys look at this and say, my God, what a well-managed accounts receivable you guys have. Delinquency rate is so low, write-off rate is so low. They really take that into consideration in evaluating our bond rating. And Jenny and her team do an excellent job. I think in a way too, there's some areas in the district that are financially struggling, but by and large, if you look at the median household income, ability to pay the rates, it's very favorable, and you'll see that in the bond rating analysis when they do that. We like to track this over time, what our operating expenses are. Fortunately, that continues to go up primarily because of the inflationary costs, I believe, because our services per employee are going down. We did add a few employees. I think we're at 230 or now, 230 employees. But by and large, services per employee are in a good range. If you look at overtime, well-managed, legal expenses, well-managed. So it's good to track those. Next slide. This is a very crude, but I like the efficiency of this. How do we compare with other districts in efficiency? And, we're serving water, wastewater, and recycled customers, and there's 70,000 connections and only 230 employees plus or minus. So the efficiency of providing that much level of service only with 228 employees clearly show, in my mind, a good efficiency for our staff. Next slide. Water rates, since we just finished the cost of service. Let's see, I think this doesn't include the new rates. This is the existing rates. But if you compare them to similar agencies, we're well below them in both water and sewer areas. Now, does that really matter for the customer? Not really, because they still have to write the check. But from a comparison standpoint, I'd like to keep it at or below the median. Next slide. And these are, I think, Pat, you or Director Dwyer, you're thinking of getting out there on the street.
Yeah.
We're still in pretty good shape on the regional water bill comparison. Tuolumne's up there. I don't believe this includes Amador's recent rate increase, nor Calaveras' recent rate increase, which were significant. Next slide. And even our wastewater rates, are based on tertiary level treatment, well below average. Next slide.
I thought
Oh.
Sacramento, didn't they build that big treatment plant?
Yeah.
They're converting over to?
Yeah, it's SAC Regional, which is a regional facility that treats like the Folsom wastewater and some of that. I believe all those costs aren't in yet. They're in the construction and progress phase. But yeah, they're going to be close to us, if not above us.
And I think, according to the articles I read, that whole new facility was constructed primarily with grants and grants. So it'll, at least in short term, not be reflected in their customer rates.
Yeah, that was an interesting way they received the grants. You know, when you're dumping ammonia down the Sacramento River and you get a bunch of grants to stop.
Yeah.
It's good for them and it's good for the environment, but anyway.
But it's hard to now compare us to them.
Yeah, it was, I can't remember the dollars, but I think it was like a $1 billion or something like
Big.
that. Anyway, you know, our rates are relatively reasonable for being a tertiary level treatment plant. Next slide. This one I always watch because Standard & Poor's, even though it's an old report, they still follow this. If we're in that range of 35 to 50%, they feel that our credit is strong. So that's a real good sign. And just to remind the board, the historical cost of depreciable assets at EID is over $1 billion. That's not reproduction costs new, less depreciation. If that was the case, it'd be, I don't know, 5-6 times that $1 billion. So when we're replacing assets, just keep that in mind. We have $1 billion of depreciated assets out there that we're trying to replace in today's dollars. That's a lot of money. Next slide. Looking forward for the next few years, some of the goals. I might, and we can talk more maybe when you discuss my performance review in a little bit. We may eliminate that first goal, pursue drought year water supply with SMUD, because it's depending on El Dorado Water Agency. Although I think the relations have improved, I'm not sure we'll be able to negotiate anything on that one, but we'll see. We are strongly pursuing the points of diversion to permit 2112. We believe the draft environmental document will be going out February of '24, and that will give us a lot more flexibility of using that water uphill at the treatment plants and also out of Folsom. So I'm really pleased with that. And Elizabeth Leeper and Brian Deason are kind of taking the lead on that. They're doing a real fine job. Very complex with water modeling, temperature modeling, dealing with the issues down in Sacramento. They're doing a fine job.
Just to be clear, Jim, that's not adding points of diversion, it's increasing the diversion at our current dam at Kybers and pumping out of Folsom.
We're moving permit 2112 water that's only allowed to take out of Folsom today and moving it up to Kybers to take it at that diversion structure.
Thank you.
But with no increase of either capacity or the amount of water we divert at Kybers. Same amount of water, just different color of water, as my friend Dan Corcoran likes to say.
And over time, we may be using that water for drinking water and less for power gen, but it gives us a lot more flexibility. It's a real important project for the district. Let's see, next one, expand non-rate revenue. I think we briefed you that we're still pursuing the conserved water transfer with the Bureau. And again, Brian Deason and Elizabeth Leeper are working on that, along with Brian and Brian. I think we're going to be successful on that, and I think we'll see that hopefully within a year. Succession planning, we're continuing to work on training and looking for people to successfully, grow in the organization. I was going to say John Money was one of them, but we have Patrick there too. Growing in the organization and taking leadership positions. And it's really good to see. Replace Hanson 7, you'll see a change order in just a little bit. These are the updated dates. I won't steal Aaron's thunder, but we tried to do too much with too little people, and it's kind of delayed the project a little bit, added some costs, but we see success, in the near future. Silver Lake Dam, I think Brian mentioned that, 2027. Look forward to that. When I tell people that's on our project list, and that I'll be really interested to see what's inside of it. Talk about artifacts. Who knows what's inside of that?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Update the cost of service study. We've talked a lot about that just today. Powerhouse interconnection with PG&E for our hydro project. I think I should be seeing that contract assigned, in the next week or so. So that's going to be done. Bass Lake relocation is completed. It's a great improvement for the people that provide service down there. Next one. Still like to, when we have any type of extra revenue, is try and prepay that OPEB amount, because we did 6 million back in 2012 and now it's almost 13. And if we can keep doing that and grow that, hopefully we minimize our unfunded liability. Brian Polson's still working on the disposition of surplus property. We'll be seeing some more of that in the next few months. And Brian and I are working a lot on Phase 2 Water Quality Control Plan update, i.e. voluntary settlement agreement. I think you're going to see some stuff in the press on that too, where the state board released their report and they want to do some sort of, what is that called, the unimpaired flow. And we're talking to them that we want to do the voluntary settlements, minimal impact EID, and we're spending a lot of time on that, but hopefully it'll come to fruition soon. Next slide. Master plan, you should be seeing that, I think soon. By the end of the year, you'll see that, and we'll be updating the FCC fees first part of 2024. I don't see too many opportunities to pay down debt because we did so much of it the last few years, but we'll continue to look at it. And then issue the major projects, bonds for the major projects. Unfortunately, that's now 60 and 120, but we'll see how that goes as we proceed with the CIP project. So those are hopefully the goals that we pursue and achieve over the next 5 years. And I'm open to board feedback or direction.
George? You okay? Good. Good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Okay. I believe we are on to action items.
We'll take
Oh, yeah, we
public
probably take
comment
public
for
comment.
information item number 7. If there are any members of the public wishing to speak, please refer to page 2 of today's agenda. President Veerkamp, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on information item number 7.
Thank you, Jen. We're on to item 8. Inspector Day, would you please take this item? I will be recusing myself.
You got it. All right. Item 8, consider ratifying EID general warrant registers. Do I hear a motion for that?
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Is any further board comment? Seeing none, do we have any public comment on paying our bills on item 8?
Vice President Day, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 8. Option 1, moved by Director Anzini and seconded by Director Dwyer. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 4, and 5 voting aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Director Day. We will now move on to item 9, information technology.
Good afternoon, Board. Aaron Kennedy, Director of Information Technology, here to present a update and change order request for the Hanson project.
And just to remind the board, Aaron's been here about 4 weeks, so leave the pitchforks in the briefcase.
We have to be gentle.
Trial by fire.
Well, this is a good one to start. Yeah, we are, and I wish I had better news on this one, but it is, could have been considerably worse. We looking at a lot of different ways to make this as not as painful as it could have been.
And Aaron, you do not have to read that slide.
No, was not planning on reading the entirety. I do know it's afternoon, and we've been here several hours. I'll try to keep this as short as I can.
Thank you.
The one line I do want to mention is the March 22nd, 2021. That is when the board awarded the contracts to Quantum Resolve to get this project actually started. That does come up a little bit in some of the charts that we'll show on the next slide, or the next several slides, I should say. Just as a reminder, the Hanson software is a critical component. It is actually multiple modules within there. It is critical for the operation and the daily activities. One is CMMS, which is the Computerized Maintenance and Management System. That is what we track a lot of the maintenance of the assets of the district. When we do work, when are things needed, it helps us determine the useful life expectancy of equipment and whether it's better to have it repaired or replaced. Then you have CIS, which is the Customer Information System. That's our billing system. Rather important to make sure that the bills get out on time and we understand we're paid. And then the CDR is the, almost forgot it, Community Development Records. That is actually for community, for all the development, all the new development, new systems, or new service connects.
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
that? Will that automatically import what our history has been into this? Because you only talked about new.
Part of it, yes,
Okay.
but not all of it. We won't go back decades, but it
Okay.
is to get back some of the information so that they can see where it's going forward. Unfortunately, there is a cost benefit to import all of your old information into
Correct.
to that versus the last several years to be able to help with your future development. There is certain parts where if they were looking at history, they would have to go back to the older records.
Okay.
And actually, this is also on the next slide, so I did go ahead a little bit, my apologies. On the next slide, we do talk about, thank you. The original project was scheduled to take about 30 months or about 2.5 years. Originally supposed to schedule to start in March. But if you notice, as I pointed out earlier, the contract wasn't approved until the end of March. So we actually didn't get started until 2 months later to get all of the contractors and vendors up to speed. So immediately we were already behind schedule of what was planned. The foundation was supposed to take about 4 months, with the CMMS taking 13 months. Overlapping with that foundation, CIS was supposed to take 16 months with 12 months of overlap of CMMS, and then CDR was supposed to take 14 months with about a 4-month overlap. What that really means is staff who is working on this, who effectively, it's the same core set of staff at EID who work on all 4 of these modules. We're working on more than one module at a time for 17 months or a year and a half of the 2.5 years. And to be frank, that was very ambitious.
So there was no project leader assigned for either one of these three?
The same project leader. That
Like,
was
it
this,
was always the same project leader, not somebody different who, and you're only talking about IT staff, right?
no, I'm talking about.
Okay, you're talking about the engineering field.
Yeah, the entirety
good.
of El Dorado Irrigation
All
District's
right.
core staff.
All right.
Now, to be clear, under CMMS, there were additional staff besides the core team who were subject matter experts on that, and then with CIS, and then as we get into CDR, other staff, but there's a core group of people who have to work on all 4 of these phases. And having experience in this at my previous employer and have done a lot of research, this is the one thing that usually messes up a project like this, is where everybody goes, yeah, sure, I can work on this simultaneously, and they don't realize what it really means is that they have to do their current job plus a new job on each of the phases. What that really means is staff for what was scheduled for 17 months, they weren't working 2 jobs, they were working 3. And to be frank, it was too much. Sorry about that. Let me turn that off. Yeah, that thing just.
Strike one, Aaron.
Yeah, I thought I had that off, and apparently the tech guy doesn't know how to turn off his own phone. I will work on that.
I could barely hear it.
Yeah. But if you can go to the next slide, Jen. So again, just for visual representation, this was the original project timeline, starting in March, going through September of 2023. As I'm talking to you here now,
I love these charts.
in October, and we're not finished. We can see that we're already delayed just from the original timeline. If you can go to the next one. Some of the causes delays were outside of our control, even though, as I said originally, having 17 months of people working 3 jobs at once was ambitious. Having it with the Caldor fire, having to work around, we had several people who had gotten COVID, had to be out of the office, were not available, both EID staff and our vendors and contractors. We did have some extreme weather events. When those happen, staff's primary job takes focus, and they have to not work on this. We did have some staff attrition. So as people who are here move on or retire, that means our junior level staff have to pick up some of that work, and then we did bring in a couple of temporary employees, or I should say limited term employees, but they're not able to fill in 100% of those roles, so we have had some challenges in capacity. Eventually we get staff back in and they come up to speed, but again, it is not immediate. It does take time for staff to come up to speed into their new roles. Then we also had some legislative requirements. Please forgive me, I do not know all of them, but I do know one of them had to do with lateral line inspections, came from Sacramento. That changed, not only did we have to do that, but the district also had to change how we recorded and tracked that, which is directly related to the project we were actively working on. We had to figure out what that meant, and then make that an additional requirement of the project, plus a couple of project deliverables we had not noticed when we had originally started the project. So some change orders, of which we'll discuss in a second. Oh, thank you. So right now, we started actually in May, not March. The foundation portion, which is really how the system is currently built, that didn't take any longer than normal or what was expected. But as we began working on CMMS, that's also when we started having some of those outside delays plus some internal delays. It took 7 months longer than originally planned. One of the problems with that is, as staff were working on the CMMS, they need that completed before they can move to the next piece on CIS. So if it's not completed in CMMS, they can't do the corresponding piece in CIS. So every delay we had in CMMS directly impacted CIS. Additionally, we had some delays in that one itself.
Single lane tunnel.
Basically, yes. We're really only able to actively work on one at a time.
For us real techie guys, what's CIS?
Oh, sorry. CIS, Customer Information System, so the billing system, and CMMS was the Computerized Maintenance and Management System.
The computerized maintenance management system can also involve vehicles.
Yes.
vehicles into it, plus all the equipment replacements and inventory of all your materials.
Well, all your assets, your lines, so for example, it maintains and keeps track of the lateral lines, how often we maintain those, your force mains, your transmission lines.
Right.
And then, again, CDR is the community development side for development services. If we can go to the next slide. So currently, total funding to date on this project is a little over $11 million. We have spent as of September, so not as of this month, my apologies, is about 8.7 million, of which balance remaining is about 2.3. With that, that is to complete it as if we were able to maintain our, what was originally scheduled. Almost all those funds are allocated and set aside to pay bills we've already scheduled to do. But within that original funding of 11 million, we had 940,000 or just a little under $1 million for contingency. We've had change orders to date of just under 500,000, so 493,000. Apparently did a decimal. Should have been a comma. $400,095, leaving $446,599.05 in that contingency amount. So that's where we are right now. What we're proposing is, if you go to the next slide, thank you, is actually 3 change orders, 2 with Quantum Resolve, 1 to actually put CDR on a hold. Reason for that is, as I alluded to earlier, the staff just are not able to work on both at the same time. So we will have a 6-month hold on that portion of the project where very little, some work will be continuing to work on it to continue our inertia as we have, but they will no longer be trying to work both simultaneously. The second change order 13.
No, wait, which staff, our staff or the contractors?
Our staff,
Okay,
our staff.
Thank you.
And I'm going to get back to that in just, yeah. And then the 6-month extension to the CIS phase, because we are currently about 9 months behind, and we have about 7 months to left to complete it. And we're having them extended 6 more months now. And then the change order for Weston, they are helping us with project management and consulting, 6 more months of their time to be able to see the entire project. So really for the Weston one, that actually goes to the end of their current contract. But I'd rather bring it up now as the entirety of this, so that we can all see it in front and the public can see it
You
transparent.
don't have to come back.
So that I don't have to come back at the end. I really do not want to have to do this, and I do not plan to. And I did not see who made the comment asking about the hold. One of the things that we are having our contractor do on that hold side is address some of the things we would like them to look at on the CMMS and some of the other pieces that were not part of the project, had never intended to be, but as we've used the new version, we've liked them to address and make some modifications to it to improve its efficiency and operational usage. So while it looks like we're having them spending money to not work, that is actually not true. They are going to be working on the other portions so that our staff doesn't have to work on it. And we had always planned on doing that as part of our operational side, additionals, modifications and changes once live. So some of those costs may not actually come out of this project side, out of the CIP, it'll come out of operations, but as I cannot tell you how much, I am looking to have the change order applied to the project. If there's any savings, which I really hope there is, at the end I'll be able to say we're slightly under budget with these change orders. But with that in mind, let's talk about how much what that actually does is pushes out CIS to be completing in April of 2024 instead of the currently end of this year, because quite frankly, we will not make it. And then putting that delay in CDR, pushing its completion out to March of 2024. In total, we're about a year and a half delayed, but really we're pulling this back and only actually costing us about a 6-month delay monetarily speaking. We've been able to identify some savings and some costs that the vendors and contractors are not charging us for, they're taking some of the hit on this as well. So while they would want to charge us quite a bit more, we are able to work with them and negotiate with, there's just no way we could do that. So with that, what are the actual change orders? The CDR pause is change order 12, $391,625.55. Again, that is to not work on the project, but rather work on other pieces that we want them to do to enhance what's already live. Change order 13 is for them, for the extension of the CIS phase, which is ongoing currently, and then 90,000 from Weston. And while 90,000 is within General Manager Jim Abercrombie's authority, we wanted to make sure that the entire cost was transparent and shown to you. As I mentioned earlier, we have a contingency fund of remaining $446,000. Totality of all three of these change orders is just under $800,000, which would leave us a deficit of about $350,000. So we are asking the board to approve the three change orders and $400,000 of additional, I was going to read it off again, of additional funding to give us just a small amount of contingency in case there's a small change between now and then, because it is about a year off from now. There may be something to come up. So the option one, the request is to approve contract change orders number 2, 12, and 13 to Quantum Resolve in the not to exceed amount of $391,625.55 and $313,958.35 respectively for the software integration and implementation. Contract change order 2 to Raftelis Inc. in the not to exceed amount of $90,000 for project management support and authorize total additional funding of $400,000 for the Hanson Core software upgrade project, project number 18055, or take the other action as directed. So if you have any
I'll
questions.
move option 1.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion in a second.
I have a question a couple
Yes.
questions for Aaron.
Sure.
If I recall correctly, when we were first approved this, there was another alternative that was a longer, slower process. And one of the downsides to that was that by the time that longer, slower process got finished, the technology, we'd be behind again. And so we decided, I think, to try to accelerate it a little bit. And like you said, it was ambitious. But is there some risk to us running into that by the time we finish this, that then we'll still be behind?
That is part of why we've asked with the CDR delay that they're working on some of the pieces already in place to get those upgraded as well in the meantime so that they're not behind.
Right.
Although they will not be the most current version of them, they will be more current than they currently are.
Okay.
But yeah, to be honest, having worked on some other of these projects, whenever anyone says, we can get it done faster, I almost never believe that. It's just, unless you're well-staffed, i.e. overstaffed, you really can't do it.
Thank you.
Director Anzini?
I appreciate the fact that you've only been here 4 weeks and you've taken on this bull with his huge horns. The important thing is it's necessary. And that actually, the whole part, people, or at least the public, don't realize that when it comes to data integration and data, when you're changing over software, it's a human part of it that's the hardest part to take care of, including if you have a turnover, or in the case we had a pandemic problem, and we've had a turnover of employees. And so that knowledge does not help, but it certainly, if you've stepped in this far, I am amazed that you've been able to pull this off. And the benefits are going to be cost-effective in the end on trying to find that information at any computer's station that an employee is going to find, so they don't have to worry about it. It'll probably be on their phone too. So, yes. All right, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any public comment in the room? Online?
President Veerkamp, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 9, option 1, moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Day. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you very much. We will be going to closed session, I believe, next for items A and B.
President Veerkamp, the board will now recess into closed session to consider the matters as you described, agendized as closed session items A and B. I anticipate that closed sessions will require at least 20 minutes.
All right, please let the record reflect we've came out of closed session, and council, do you have anything to report?
President Veerkamp, the board met in closed session to conduct the annual performance evaluations as reflected on the agenda of the general manager and the general counsel, and the board took no reportable action. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much. Review of assignments. Jen, do we need anything we need to review?
None today.
Not so fast.
Yes, yes, Director Dwyer.
A couple items I'd like to see on future agendas where they fit. There's nothing emergency about them, but one is the vegetation management effort along the El Dorado Main corridor, along with the completion of formal easements for those. Brian?
I actually think that's scheduled, but
I didn't see it on the list.
I have a super secret list.
Oh, okay. Well, then, good. You're ahead of the game. And then also the status of the Slide Park intertie easements primarily, because I got rumblings there's some issues, but, so I'd like, again, when it fits in the agenda, that's fine.
All right.
Could we have those two review of assignments from Director Dwyer
We are adjourned.
at 1:20? Thank you.
Jan, I